The fiendish oil executive's Rolls-Royce glided to a stop outside the hospital, its polished exterior reflecting the fluorescent lights like black ice. Inside, Marcus Harrington, ruthless CEO of Petrotech and notoriously dubbed the Vulture by Wall Street, straightened his tailored suit as he prepared for another hospital board meeting, where he'd slash budgets with the same cold precision he used to dismantle failing oil companies. Elena Reyes wiped tears from her exhausted eyes, staring at the mounting medical bills for her daughter's leukemia treatment, $247,000 and climbing. The night shift nurse who had cared for countless patients now couldn't afford to save her own child. Little did Marcus know that the unassuming janitor mopping the hospital corridor was actually Gabriel Winters, a former Wall Street prodigy with a score to settle and a brilliant scheme that would force the billionaire to confront the human cost of his cutthroat decisions. Will Gabriel's dangerous deception lead to justice or disaster? Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of redemption and second chances. Elena's fingers trembled as she folded the hospital bill and tucked it back into her purse. The irony wasn't lost on her. 12 years as a nurse at Memorial General, caring for others' children, and now she couldn't afford treatment for her own. She glanced at her watch. 3 hours until her night shift began. The pediatric oncology ward was quiet when Elena slipped in to check on Sophia. Her daughter lay small and fragile against the white sheets, dark circles under her eyes contrasting with her pale skin. The leukemia had progressed rapidly in the past month. At 13, Sophia should have been worrying about math tests and first crushes, not blood counts and chemotherapy. "Mom," Sophia's voice was thin, barely audible above the steady beep of monitors. Elena smoothed her daughter's thinning hair. "Hey, sunshine. Just checking on you before my shift. Did Dr. Patel talk to you about the new treatment?" Sophia's eyes held a hope that pierced Elena's heart. "He did." Elena managed a smile, concealing the devastation she'd felt when the insurance denial letter arrived that morning. The experimental CAR T-cell therapy was Sophia's best chance, and completely out of reach at nearly $250,000. "So I can get it?" Elena sat on the edge of the bed. "We're working on it, sweetie. There's some paperwork." Sophia nodded, accepting the half-truth with the unearned wisdom of a child who'd grown up too fast. "It's expensive, isn't it?" "Don't worry about that." Elena squeezed her hand. "That's my job." After Sophia drifted back to sleep, Elena made her way to the staff locker room. Her colleague Diane was already changing into scrubs. "How's our girl today?" Diane asked, her eyes soft with concern. Elena shook her head. "The standard protocol isn't working. Her counts are worse, and the CAR T denied." Again, Elena slammed her locker shut with more force than intended. "They're calling it experimental. Despite the success rates, our insurance won't cover it, and the hospital's patient assistance fund is depleted." "After that last round of budget cuts," Diane muttered. "Thanks to our friend on the board, Harrington." Elena practically spat the name. "Man makes 8 figures a year, flies in for board meetings in his Rolls, and his first order of business is slashing the pediatric oncology budget. I heard he's here today. Another emergency budget meeting." Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Patel. "Need to discuss Sophia's options. My office. 7 p.m. options." Elena knew what that meant. Without the CAR T therapy, they were down to palliative care, managing Sophia's pain rather than fighting for her life. "I have to go," she told Diane, changing quickly. "Cover for me with Martinez if I'm a few minutes late." Elena hurried through the labyrinthine corridors of Memorial General. As she rounded the corner to the administrative wing, a cleaning cart blocked her path. The janitor, a man she'd seen around but couldn't place, was mopping methodically. "Sorry," he murmured, moving the cart aside. Elena barely nodded as she rushed past, not noticing his eyes following her, or the way he glanced at the name on her ID badge. Dr. Patel's office was small, but warmly decorated with photos of his family and mementos from patients who'd recovered under his care. Elena wondered if Sophia would ever add something to his collection. "Elena," he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Thank you for coming before your shift. Just tell me what our next steps are." Elena leaned forward, hands clasped to stop their trembling. Dr. Patel removed his glasses. "I've exhausted our standard protocols. Without the CAR T therapy, there has to be something else. I've applied to 3 clinical trials. Sophia meets the criteria for 2 of them, but there are waiting lists." He hesitated. "Months, likely." "She doesn't have months." Elena's voice broke. "I know." Dr. Patel slid a folder across the desk. "This is everything I have on the CAR T therapy. The hospital requires full payment before treatment can begin. $247,000. Elena's laugh was hollow. Might as well be $2 million. There are some charities. I've applied to 7 already. Waiting lists. There too. Elena stood abruptly. I'll figure something out. As she left Dr. Patel's office, the hospital's PA system announced the board meeting would begin in 10 minutes. Something hardened in Elena's chest. Without thinking, she changed direction, heading toward the executive boardroom. The corridor. Outside was empty except for the same janitor, now polishing the brass nameplate on the boardroom door. Memorial General Hospital Board of Trustees. Elena paused, watching the members file in. Doctors, administrators, community leaders. Last to arrive was Marcus Harrington, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. He moved with the easy confidence of the extremely wealthy, nodding curtly to others as he passed. The janitor kept his head down as Harrington approached, becoming nearly invisible in the way that service workers often do to the powerful. But Elena caught something in the man's eyes as he watched Harrington enter the boardroom. A flash of calculation, of purpose. Then he noticed her watching, and his expression changed, offering a small, sympathetic smile before wheeling his cart. Away, Elena stood frozen, knowing she should report to her shift, but unable to move. Inside that room, people would make decisions that determined whether children like Sophia lived or died, all while discussing numbers on spreadsheets rather than human lives. She thought of Sophia, waiting for a miracle, of the bills piling up, at home, of the treatments just out of reach. And for the first time in her life, Elena Reyes wondered what she might be willing to do, what lines she might cross, to save her daughter. Gabriel Winters wasn't always a janitor. 5 years ago, he'd commanded boardrooms much like the one he now cleaned, his tailored suits a stark contrast to the gray uniform he wore today. He'd been a Wall Street wunderkind, the fastest rising star at Blackridge Capital, with a knack for seeing patterns in markets that others missed. As he pushed his cleaning cart down the hospital corridor, Gabriel mentally cataloged Marcus Harrington's schedule. Board meeting until 8, dinner at Elysian downtown at 9. If his pattern held, then the Rolls would take him back to his penthouse overlooking the park. Tomorrow, he'd fly back to corporate headquarters. Predictable, and predictability was a weakness Gabriel could exploit. He ducked into a supply closet, locking the door behind him. From his pocket, he extracted a small notebook filled with meticulous observations, times, dates, names, routines. 3 months of research distilled into actionable intelligence. Gabriel had always been detail-oriented. It was what had made him exceptional at trading, until it destroyed him. The memories surfaced unbidden. The market crash of 2020, the desperate clients, the fateful decision to cross a line he'd sworn never to cross. It had been for his mother, her cancer treatments not covered by insurance, experimental protocols her only hope. Sound familiar? When the SEC investigation came, Gabriel took the fall alone. 3 years in federal prison, his license revoked. Reputation shattered. By the time he was released, his mother was gone. The system had failed them both. He'd been mopping floors at Memorial General for 6 months when he first saw Elena Reyes. He recognized her immediately, the nurse who'd shown his mother such extraordinary kindness in her final days, sneaking in extra pain medication, staying past her shifts to hold his mother's hand when Gabriel couldn't be there. And now her daughter had leukemia, the same cancer that took his mother, the same heartless system denying care. The same man making those decisions. Gabriel closed his notebook as his phone vibrated. A text from his only remaining contact on Wall Street. Harrington pushing hostile. Takeover of Jensen Biotech. Announcement next week. Stock will tank. He's been quietly shorting their shares for months. Another piece of the puzzle. Jensen Biotech was developing promising cancer treatments, including refinements to the CAR-T therapy Sophia needed. If Petratech absorbed them, those treatments would be repriced, repackaged, and delayed while Harrington maximized profits. More lives sacrificed on the altar of quarterly earnings. Gabriel stepped out of the closet and resumed his rounds, keeping his head down as hospital staff rushed past. He'd become adept at invisibility. The uniform helped. Few people looked directly at maintenance workers. It was as if wearing gray made you fade into the background, a ghost moving through walls of privilege. He paused outside Sophia's room, watching through the glass as Elena sat beside her sleeping daughter, her nurse's scrubs rumpled, dark circles under her eyes. Gabriel remembered sitting the same way with his mother, the same expression of helpless determination on his face. 5 years ago, he'd compromised his ethics to save his mother and failed. Now he had a chance to make it right, not for himself, but for Elena and Sophia. The plan had seemed straightforward when he first conceived it. Use his financial expertise to create an investment opportunity too tempting for Harrington to resist. Get close enough to execute a sophisticated con that would transfer millions from Harrington's accounts. Anonymous donations would take care of Sophia's treatment, with enough left over to fund the hospital's pediatric oncology department for years. But watching Elena now, Gabriel felt doubt creep in. The risks were enormous. If caught, he'd return to prison, this time for decades. And despite his confidence, Marcus Harrington hadn't amassed billions by being easily fooled. A doctor approached Sophia's room, and Gabriel quickly moved on, pushing his cart toward the executive wing. As he rounded the corner, he nearly collided with Harrington himself, exiting the boardroom with the hospital administrator. "The cuts are necessary," Harrington was saying, his voice crisp with authority. "Sentimentality is a luxury nonprofits cannot afford." "But the pediatric oncology department," the administrator began, "is underperforming. The cost per successful outcome is unsustainable." Harrington checked his watch. "We've been over this. Redirect those resources to departments with better metrics. Better metrics. As if children's lives could be reduced to data points on a spreadsheet." Gabriel kept his eyes down as he passed, but inside, something hardened. Any reservations vanished. He'd spent months studying Harrington. His weaknesses, his routines, his pressure points. The man wasn't just wealthy, he was arrogant, convinced of his superiority. And arrogance created blind spots. Later that night, as Gabriel cleaned the now empty boardroom, he reviewed the documents left behind. Budget reports, department assessments, proposed cuts. Information was currency, and he was building his reserves. On the whiteboard, someone had written and underlined, "Patient Assistance Fund, discontinued." Gabriel took a photo with his phone, then carefully erased the board. Tomorrow, he would start the next phase. No more observing from the shadows. It was time to introduce himself to Marcus Harrington. Marcus Harrington's penthouse offered panoramic views of the city, but he rarely noticed them anymore. 22 floors above the street, he stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, tumbler of 18-year-old Macallan in hand, seeing not the glittering skyline but the quarterly projections that wouldn't leave his mind. Petratech needed the Jensen acquisition. The board was growing restless, shareholders demanding higher returns. $60 billion in annual revenue wasn't enough. They wanted growth, expansion, dominance. The oil business was changing, and diversification into biotech would position Petratech ahead of the curve. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter. "Changed my mind about Thanksgiving. Staying at school. Midterms. No greeting, no love you. Just another cancellation in a long line of them." Marcus didn't reply. What would he say? That he'd already had his assistant arrange for the private jet to bring her home? That the housekeeper had ordered all her favorite foods? That despite everything, he'd been looking forward to seeing her? Instead, he took another sip of scotch and pulled up the hospital board documents on his tablet. Memorial General was a distraction from his real work, but it kept his mind occupied during the long evenings alone in this too-large apartment. Marcus had joined the hospital board 3 years ago, not out of altruism, but because it was expected. Of someone in his position, philanthropy is a tax write-off. But he'd approached it with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to business, identifying inefficiencies, streamlining operations, cutting waste. At least, that's what he told himself he was doing. He swiped to the pediatric oncology departments. Financials. The numbers were clear. High costs, limited successes, unsustainable losses. From a purely business perspective, the decision to reallocate resources was obvious. So why did it bother him? Marcus closed the file and opened another. A document he revisited more often than he cared to admit. Catherine's medical records from 5 years ago. His wife's battle with pancreatic cancer. The treatments that failed. The experimental protocol they'd tried too late. He scrolled to the final page. The death certificate. In the reflection of the window, Marcus hardly recognized himself. At 53, his once dark hair was now steel gray at the temples. Lines etched themselves deeper around his eyes. When had he become so severe? Catherine would have said he was becoming his father. The thought made him drain his glass. His father, Harold Harrington, had built Petratech from a small regional oil company into a global energy giant through sheer force of will and a complete disregard for anything but the bottom line. Including his family, Marcus had sworn he'd be different. Yet here he was, alone, estranged from his only child, using the same language, making the same choices his father had made. His phone rang. The hospital administrator. "Harrison," Marcus answered, his voice automatically shifting to its boardroom tone. "Mr. Harrington, I've been reviewing the cuts to pediatric oncology. There's a case, a nurse's daughter, that I think warrants special consideration. We've been through this. The Patient Assistance Fund was discontinued for a reason. We can't make exceptions. But she works for the hospital. 12 years of service. Her daughter's prognosis with this new treatment is excellent, but without it, the policy is clear." Marcus cut him off. "If we make an exception for one employee, we'll have to do it for all of them. That's exactly the kind of financial bleeding we're trying to stop." There was a pause on the line. "I understand," the administrator finally said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'll inform Nurse Reyes." "Do that." Marcus ended the call, ignoring the twinge of what? Guilt? Impossible. He didn't do guilt. Guilt was inefficient. He refilled his glass and returned to the window. Below, the city continued its rhythm, people going about their lives, unaware of the decisions made in boardrooms and penthouses that shaped their existence. Marcus had spent his career being the one who made those decisions, not the one affected by them. It was simpler that way, cleaner. His tablet chimed with a new email, the daily report from his executive assistant. Tomorrow's schedule: breakfast with the CFO, strategy meeting with legal about Jensen Biotech, lunch with a potential investor, then his private jet back to headquarters. Marcus skimmed the details until one entry caught his attention. 11:30 a.m. Gabriel Winters, Apollyon Investments. Referred by James Killington, Morgan Stanley. Private investment opportunity. He didn't recall approving this meeting. But James was an old colleague. If he'd sent someone, it was worth 15 minutes. Marcus made a mental note to have his assistant research this Winters person before the meeting. Returning to his desk, Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up his daughter's social media profiles. Something he did more often than he'd admit to anyone. Recent photos showed her at campus events, laughing with friends, living a life completely separate from his. In every image, she looked more like Catherine. The resemblance was a constant reminder of what he'd lost. What they'd both lost. Marcus closed the laptop abruptly. Sentiment was luxury he couldn't afford. He'd said as much earlier today. Emotions clouded judgment, and clear judgment was what had made him successful, what had earned him the nickname the Vulture on Wall Street. His ability to circle failing companies, watching patiently for the perfect moment to swoop in and claim the valuable parts while discarding the rest. It was just business. Never personal, so why did that nurse's daughter keep intruding on his thoughts? Marcus shook his head, draining his second scotch. He needed sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new companies to acquire, new efficiencies to implement. The world didn't stop turning because one child was sick. As he prepared for bed, Marcus caught sight of the family photo he kept on his nightstand. Himself, Catherine, and Allison at the beach house, years ago. They were smiling. He couldn't remember the last time he'd genuinely smiled. For a brief moment, he wondered what Catherine would think of the man he'd become. Then he turned out the light, pushed the thought away, and did what he'd perfected over the past 5 years. He locked away anything that felt like weakness and prepared to face tomorrow as the Vulture once more. Gabriel adjusted his tie in the reflection of the hospital's glass doors. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the invisible janitor in gray, replaced by a sharp-suited investment consultant with confident posture and calculating eyes. He'd spent his last paycheck on this suit, but the investment would be worth it. First impressions mattered, especially with men like Harrington. He entered the hospital through the executive entrance, nodding to the security guard who'd seen him countless times in his janitor uniform, but now looked straight through him. The power of perception and social hierarchies. Gabriel almost smiled at the irony. "I have an 11:30 with Mr. Harrington," he told the receptionist, sliding a business card across the desk. Gabriel Winters, Apollyon Investments. The name was his touch of dark humor. In biblical lore, Apollyon was the angel of destruction, fitting for what he planned to do to Harrington's fortune. The receptionist directed him to a small conference room where Marcus Harrington was reviewing documents. Gabriel took a deep breath, slipping fully into character. For this to work, he couldn't just act the part, he had to become it. "Mr. Harrington," Gabriel extended his hand. "Thank you for making time." Harrington's handshake was brief but firm. "James speaks highly of you. Though I admit I'm not familiar with Apollyon Investments. We're deliberately low profile." Gabriel took a seat, projecting casual confidence. "We manage private investments for a select clientele, primarily opportunities that exist in regulatory gray areas or market inefficiencies." "Gray areas?" Harrington raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like insider trading." Gabriel smiled. "Nothing so crude or illegal. Let's just say we identify opportunities before they become public knowledge, through extensive research and connections." He opened his briefcase and slid across a prospectus, meticulously prepared with just enough legitimate information to seem authentic, overlaid with precisely the kind of exclusive opportunity that would appeal to someone of Harrington's temperament. "I understand you're acquiring Jensen Biotech." Harrington's eyes narrowed. "That information isn't public. As I said, extensive research and connections." Gabriel leaned forward. "What if I told you there's a way to significantly increase your personal profit from that acquisition, separate from Petratech's interests?" For the next 20 minutes, Gabriel laid out a complex investment strategy involving shell companies, pre-positioned options, and leveraged positions that would activate once the Jensen acquisition was announced. It was the perfect bait. Technically, legal, extremely profitable, and with just enough exclusivity to appeal to Harrington's ego. "The minimum buy-in is $10 million, Gabriel concluded. "Expected return is 3-to-1 within 90 days. Harrington studied the prospectus with the shrewd eyes that had earned him billions. "Why bring this to me? You don't strike me as the charitable type, Mr. Winters." "I'm not." Gabriel maintained steady eye contact. "You've built a reputation for decisive action. This opportunity has a narrow window, and I need investors who don't waste time with committees and consultants. Additionally, your involvement opens doors to other potential clients in my portfolio." Harrington nodded slowly. "I'll need to verify some of these projections." "Of course." Gabriel stood. "I'll send additional documentation this afternoon. We'll need a decision by Friday. The positioning needs to be complete before any whispers of the acquisition reach the market." As they walked out together, Gabriel caught sight of Elena at the nurse's station, her exhausted eyes widening slightly in recognition. He gave an imperceptible shake of his head, willing her not to acknowledge him. "One more thing," Gabriel said, as they reached the hospital lobby. "James mentioned your interest in biotech extends beyond profit. Something about cancer research?" A shadow crossed Harrington's face. "James talks too much. On the contrary, he's discreet. But as it happens, one of the companies in our investment structure is developing promising therapies, including refinements to CAR-T treatments for leukemia." The slight tightening around Harrington's eyes told Gabriel his research had been correct. The CEO's wife had died of cancer, a potential pressure point. "I'll look at your proposal," Harrington said, his voice carefully neutral. "Have your documents on my desk by 3. As the CEO walked away, Gabriel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The hook was baited. Now he just needed Harrington to bite. "Mr. Winters?" Gabriel turned to find Elena approaching cautiously, confusion evident on her face. "Nurse Reyes," he acknowledged, maintaining his executive persona. "Is there something I can help you with?" She glanced toward Harrington's retreating form. "I'm sorry, I thought. Do I know you?" "I don't believe. We've met." Gabriel kept his voice formal, but softened his expression slightly. "But I've heard good things about your work in oncology." "From Mr. Harrington?" Disbelief colored her tone. "From various sources." Gabriel checked his watch. "If you'll excuse me, I have another appointment." He walked away, feeling her puzzled gaze on his back. The encounter was unfortunate, but manageable. Elena had only ever seen him in his janitor's uniform, head down, nearly invisible. Few people truly looked at service workers enough to recognize them out of context. Still, he'd need to be more careful. The con was delicate enough without complications. Outside, Gabriel walked several blocks before ducking into a public restroom. He changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, storing the suit in his backpack. By the time he emerged, he was once again anonymous, just another face in the crowd. That evening, using a secured laptop from a coffee shop with public Wi-Fi, Gabriel sent Harrington the promised documents, 60 pages of meticulously crafted financial projections, investment structures, and risk analyses. It had taken him weeks to prepare them. Drawing on all his experience from Blackridge Capital, the quality had to be impeccable. One inconsistency, one red flag, and Harrington would walk away, and Sophia was running out of time. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from his hospital contact. S's numbers dropping. Docs discussing hospice options. Whatever you're planning, hurry. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly, thinking of the small, pale girl he glimpsed through the window of her hospital room, of Elena's desperate determination, of his own mother, who had died while he sat in a prison cell, unable to help her. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. The hospital room felt smaller each day, the walls closing in as Sophia's world contracted. Elena sat beside the bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. The latest round of chemotherapy had ravaged Sophia's already fragile body, leaving her weaker than ever. Any change? Diane appeared in the doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee. Elena shook her head, accepting the coffee gratefully. Her white cell count is still dropping. They've isolated her to prevent infection. What did Martinez say about the CAR-T? The same thing. Elena's voice was flat with exhaustion. Without payment up front, they can't proceed. And even if I sold everything I own, took out every possible loan. She let the sentence hang unfinished. The math was impossible. $247,000 might as well be $247 million. Diane squeezed her shoulder. The union rep is still fighting with administration, and we've raised almost $12,000 from staff donations. Fraction of what they needed. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The kindness of her colleagues was overwhelming, but it wouldn't be enough. Nothing would be enough. Sophia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Mom, I'm here, sunshine. Elena leaned forward, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. How are you feeling? Tired. Sophia's voice was barely audible, really tired. Dr. Martinez entered, chart in hand. His expression told Elena everything before he spoke. I'd like to talk to you outside, he said gently. In the hallway, Martinez didn't sugarcoat it. The latest blood work shows disease progression despite our most aggressive protocol. Her organs are beginning to show signs of stress. What about the clinical trials? Elena asked, clinging to the last threads of hope. I received word this morning. The waiting lists are extensive, and given Sophia's current condition, he hesitated. They're prioritizing patients with better prognoses. The words hit Elena like physical blows. Better prognoses, meaning Sophia was too sick to save. So that's it? We just give up? There are still palliative options. We can make her comfortable, manage her pain. She's 13, Elena's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby staff. She should be in school, playing with friends, worrying about homework, not dying because we can't afford a treatment that exists. Martinez's eyes reflected her pain. I've appealed to the board again, but after the recent budget decisions, Harrington. Elena spat the name. The entire board voted on those cuts. Martinez reminded her gently, though yes, he was the most vocal advocate. Elena closed her eyes, suddenly overwhelmed by the sheer unfairness of it all. I need to take some time off. I can't leave her now, of course. Martinez nodded. I've already spoken with scheduling. Take whatever time you need. Your position will be waiting. If Sophia survived. The unspoken qualifier hung between them. Back in Sophia's room, Elena found her daughter staring at the ceiling, tears sliding silently down her hollow cheeks. I heard, Sophia whispered, through the door. Elena's heart shattered. Oh, sunshine. It's okay, Mom. Sophia reached for her hand, her thin fingers cold. I'm not scared, but she was. Elena could see it in her eyes, the terror lurking beneath her brave facade. No child should have to face death with such resignation. Listen to me. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, taking Sophia's face in her hands. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Dr. Martinez doesn't have the final word here, but the treatment costs too much. Money is just a problem, and problems have solutions. Elena forced conviction into her voice. I will find a way. I promise you. Sophia nodded, wanting to believe. Elena held her until she drifted back to sleep, then stepped into the hallway, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts. Friends, family, colleagues, anyone who might be able to help. Her sister had already emptied her savings. Her parents were retired on fixed incomes. Friends had contributed what they could. Banks had denied her loan applications due to her existing medical debt. Elena leaned against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the cold linoleum floor. For the first time since Sophia's diagnosis, she allowed herself to cry, silent, shuddering sobs that came from the depths of her soul. "Ms. Reyes." She looked up to find the man from earlier, Winters, standing in the hallway, concern etched on his face. He looked different in casual clothes, but she recognized him now. "You're the janitor," she said, quickly wiping her tears. A flicker of something crossed his face. "I was. And now I'm not. It's complicated. Everything is complicated." Elena laughed humorlessly. He glanced toward Sophia's room. "Your daughter?" Elena nodded, too exhausted for suspicion. "Sophia. Leukemia. I'm sorry." The words seemed genuinely felt. "Is there anything I can do? Unless you have $250,000? For her treatment, no." Winters was silent for a moment, then said, "What if I told you there might be a way?" Elena looked up sharply. "What are you talking about? I can't explain right now." He glanced around the hallway. "But I know about Sophia's situation, about the CAR-T therapy she needs, about Harrington's role in cutting the patient assistance fund. How do you—" "I have a plan." His voice dropped. "It's not entirely legal, and it's definitely risky. But it could work. A week ago, Elena would have walked away from such a conversation. But now, with Sophia's life measured in weeks, possibly days, what kind of plan? The less you know, the better." His expression was solemn. "But if it works, Sophia will get her treatment, and more children after her. Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Winters hesitated. 5 years ago, my mother died of cancer in this hospital. You were her night nurse." Recognition dawned slowly. "Evelyn Winters? Terminal pancreatic cancer?" He nodded. "You showed her kindness when it mattered most. You held her hand when I couldn't be there. I was just doing my job." "No." His voice was firm. "You went far beyond your job. You treated her with dignity. You smuggled in her favorite music. You advocated for her pain management when others wouldn't listen." Elena remembered now. The elegant older woman with her son's same intense eyes. The son who'd been mysteriously absent during her final weeks. "Where were you?" she asked. "At the end? Prison." His answer was blunt. "For financial crimes I committed trying to pay for her experimental treatments. By the time I was released, she was gone." The parallel to her own situation wasn't lost on Elena. "And now you're what? Back for revenge?" "Justice." Winters straightened. "Look, I can't say more right now, but I'm close to making this happen. Just hold on a little longer. Sophia may not have much longer." "I know." His expression softened. "But please, trust me. Just for a few more days." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving Elena with more questions than answers. She watched him disappear around the corner, wondering if desperation had finally pushed her to madness, putting her faith in a stranger with a mysterious past and cryptic promises. But as she returned to Sophia's room and saw her daughter's pallid face, Elena realized she had no choice. Hope, no matter how fragile or strange its vessel, was all they had left. Marcus Harrington wasn't a man who impressed easily. He'd built his fortune on skepticism, on questioning every proposal, on finding the weakness in every deal. Yet as he reviewed Gabriel Winters' proposal for the 3rd time, he found himself genuinely intrigued. The structure was elegant, complex enough to obscure its true nature from regulatory scrutiny, yet fundamentally sound in its approach. The projected returns were ambitious, but not implausible. Most importantly, it leveraged the Jensen Biotech acquisition in ways his own team hadn't considered. "What do we know about this Winters character?" Marcus asked his chief of security, who sat across from him in the Petratech private jet. Former senior vice president at Blackridge Capital, rising star until 2020, when he was convicted of securities fraud. Phillips slid a dossier across the table. "Served 3 years in federal prison. Released 2 years ago." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A felon? And James Killington referred him?" Apparently, Winters' strategies were brilliant before he crossed the line. Made Blackridge billions. After prison, he dropped off the grid. Resurfaced recently with Apollyon Investments. Small firm, exclusive clientele. Criminal record explains the gray area approach. Marcus flipped through the file. What was his motivation for the fraud? Phillips hesitated. According to court records, he diverted funds to pay for his mother's cancer treatments. Experimental protocols, not covered by insurance. Something uncomfortable shifted in Marcus's chest. He closed the file. "Set up a meeting for tomorrow. More private this time. The Pierre Hotel, my usual suite." "Sir," given his background, "I'm aware of the risks." Marcus cut him off. "Have security present but discreet, And contact Jensen's CFO. I want verification on these treatment developments, Winters mentioned. After the security chief left, Marcus found himself staring out the jet window at the clouds below. The coincidence was unsettling. Winters' mother dying of cancer, his own wife's similar fate. Was it really coincidence? Or had Winters researched him, crafted a story designed to resonate? Marcus had built his career on recognizing patterns, and his instincts were signaling caution. Yet the potential return was substantial, and the strategy itself appeared sound. Perhaps more importantly, something about Winters had intrigued him. The man had an intensity, a focus that reminded Marcus of himself 20 years ago. Before Catherine's death, before he'd hardened into the executive nicknamed the Vulture, his phone chimed with a message from his daughter, thinking about coming home for a weekend next month. Maybe. The tentative olive branch was unexpected. Marcus typed several responses, deleted them all, finally settling on, "The jet is yours whenever you want it. Just say when." It wasn't much, but it was more personal communication than they'd had in months. The next day, Marcus arrived early at the pier, taking a moment to center himself before the meeting. The suite offered panoramic views of Central Park, the fall foliage creating a tapestry of reds and golds. Catherine had loved autumn in New York. Gabriel Winters arrived precisely on time, dressed in another impeccable suit. The transformation from their first meeting was subtle but noticeable. More confidence, less deference. A man who sensed he was gaining the upper hand. "Mr. Harrington." Winters extended his hand. "Thank you for the more private venue. I've reviewed your proposal." Marcus gestured to the documents spread across the dining table. "It's impressive, if somewhat aggressive. The best opportunities usually are." Winters moved to the table, pointing to a specific section. "I've updated the projections based on new information from my sources at Jensen. Their CAR-T refinements are progressing faster than publicly reported." For the next hour, they dissected the investment structure, with Winters displaying a grasp of financial mechanisms that confirmed his background. The man clearly knew his field, convicted fraudster or not. "You went to prison for something similar to what you're proposing now," Marcus said finally, watching for the reaction. Winters didn't flinch. "Similar in some ways, different in crucial others. What I did then crossed legal boundaries out of desperation. What I'm proposing now navigates the gray areas carefully. The difference between fraud and aggressive optimization, both motivated by personal gain. Isn't everything?" Winters countered. "But if you're asking whether I learned my lesson, the answer is yes. I learned exactly where the lines are drawn and how to approach them without crossing them." Marcus found himself respecting the man's candor. "Tell me about your mother." The question clearly surprised Winters. A flash of something, pain perhaps, crossed his face before his expression turned neutral again. "Advanced pancreatic cancer. Conventional treatments failed. An experimental protocol showed promise, but insurance wouldn't cover it. So you committed fraud to pay for it." "I made a choice." Winters met his gaze steadily. "One I'd make again, despite the consequences." "And did it work? The treatment?" "I never found out." Winters' voice remained level, but his eyes hardened. "I was in prison when she died. Alone." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken parallels. Marcus found himself thinking of Catherine's final days, of treatments tried too late, of regrets that still haunted him. "My wife," he said, surprising himself with the disclosure, "died of cancer 5 years ago. Pancreatic. Like your mother." Winters nodded. "I know. That's part of why I thought you might be interested in the biotech aspects of this deal. It's not just about profit. It's always about profit." The response was automatic. Marcus's corporate mask sliding back into place. "Sentiment is a luxury, is it?" Winters leaned forward. "Then why join a hospital board? Why involve yourself in medical investments at all? There are easier ways to make money for someone in your position." The question was too perceptive, cutting closer to truths Marcus rarely acknowledged even to himself. He stood abruptly, moving to the bar. "Drink? Scotch, if you have it." Marcus poured 2 glasses, using the moment to regain his composure. When he turned back, Winters was studying the view, hands clasped behind his back, a posture that reminded Marcus eerily of himself. "The Jensen acquisition," Marcus said, handing him a glass, "is sensitive information. If word leaks before the announcement, it won't come from me." Winters sipped his scotch. "My entire business model depends on discretion. And this is just the beginning of what could be a very profitable relationship for both of us." Marcus studied him over the rim of his glass. You have other opportunities in mind? Several. Winters smiled slightly, but one step at a time. Are you in for this one? The decision had already been made, Marcus realized. Despite the red flags, despite his usual caution, something about this opportunity, and this man, had caught his interest in a way nothing had in years. 10 million, he said. As discussed, my attorneys will want to review the final documentation. Of course. Winters didn't seem surprised. I'll have everything ready by tomorrow. We'll need to move quickly after that. The timing is critical with the Jensen announcement coming. As they shook hands to conclude the meeting, Marcus noticed something. In Winters' expression, a flash of triumph quickly masked. It triggered a warning bell in the back of his mind, the instinct that had served him well in countless negotiations. One more thing, Marcus said as Winters reached the door. I had my team look into Apollyon Investments. The company is less than a year old, with a very limited footprint. Winters turned, his composure intact. As I mentioned, we maintain a deliberately low profile. Indeed, almost invisible. Marcus kept his tone casual. I'm curious. Why choose that particular name? Apollyon? The destroyer from Revelation? I have a somewhat dark sense of humor. Winters smiled. And I believe in transformation through creative destruction. The old must sometimes be torn down for the new to emerge. An interesting philosophy for an investment advisor. I find it keeps me honest about what we're really doing in finance. Winters held his gaze. Destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin, Mr. Harrington. I suspect you understand that better than most. After Winters left, Marcus stood at the window, turning the conversation over in his mind. The man was smooth. Too smooth, perhaps. Yet there was an authenticity to his intensity that was difficult to fake. Marcus's phone rang. His chief of security again. Sir, we've completed the additional background check on Winters. There's something you should know. I'm listening. After his release from prison, before Apollyon Investments, there's a 6-month gap where he seems to have worked as, the security chief paused, a janitor, at Memorial General Hospital. Marcus froze, the scotch glass halfway to his lips. Are you certain? Employment records confirm it. He left the position 3 months ago. Find out everything, Marcus ordered. Every detail. And put additional monitoring on the fund transfer protocols. Nothing moves until I give explicit approval. He ended the call, mind racing with possibilities. A former Wall Street prodigy working as a hospital janitor before approaching him with an investment opportunity. The coincidence was too neat, too constructed, yet the proposal itself remained sound. The potential profit, substantial. And something else tugged at Marcus, a curiosity about what game Winters was really playing. For the first time in years, Marcus felt truly engaged, truly alive. Whether Winters was running a sophisticated con or offering a legitimate opportunity, the coming days promised to be interesting. And Marcus Harrington had forgotten what it felt like to be interested in anything. Gabriel worked through the night in his small apartment, surrounded by financial documents, market projections, and the elaborate web of his deception. The walls were covered with diagrams and flowcharts, the architecture of his scheme laid bare in a way he would never allow anyone else to see. The plan was elegant in its complexity. The investment vehicle he'd created, ostensibly to capitalize on the Jensen Biotech acquisition, was actually a sophisticated mechanism to siphon Harrington's money into several offshore accounts before ultimately landing in a charitable foundation. Gabriel had established 6 months ago. From there, an anonymous donation would be made to Memorial General Hospital's pediatric oncology department, with specific provisions for Sophia's treatment and the reinstatement of the patient assistance fund. The beauty of it was that once executed, it would be nearly impossible to trace back to Gabriel. The paper trail would dissolve, leaving Harrington with no recourse but to accept the loss. Gabriel paused, staring at Sophia's medical file, obtained through his hospital access, pinned to the center of his wall. Her latest blood work showed critical values. Time was running out. His phone buzzed with a text from his contact at Petratech. H's security team digging into your background. They found the janitor connection. Gabriel cursed under his breath. He'd known this was a possibility, had prepared for it even, but had hoped for more time. Harrington was suspicious now, which made everything more difficult, but not impossible. In fact, it might even work to his advantage. A suspicious Harrington would be more likely to insist on additional verification measures, which would lead him straight into the trap Gabriel had prepared. Sometimes the best way to con a careful mark was to let them think they'd discovered something. Gabriel's laptop pinged with an email notification. Harrington's legal team, requesting a video conference to discuss the investment structure. He smiled grimly. Right on schedule. 30 minutes later, Gabriel was explaining the intricate details of his fraudulent investment to 3 sharp-eyed attorneys, all looking for holes in his story. He navigated their questions with practiced ease, drawing on his years at Blackridge Capital to provide satisfying, technically accurate answers that revealed nothing of his true intentions. And the initial transfer? One attorney asked. $10 million is a significant sum for a new investment vehicle without an established track record. Mr. Harrington's funds will be held in escrow by Hamilton Trust for 72 hours, Gabriel explained. During that time, his team can verify all documentation and positioning. Only after full satisfaction will the funds be released into the primary investment structure. It was a reasonable safeguard, one that appeared to protect Harrington, while actually serving Gabriel's timeline. The 72-hour window coincided perfectly with the planned Jensen announcement, creating a smokescreen of market activity that would mask his real moves. The attorneys seemed satisfied. One made notes to adjust the contracts accordingly, while another asked about tax implications. Gabriel provided detailed, sophisticated responses that showcased his financial expertise. The more competent he appeared, the less they would question the fundamental premise of his scheme. After the moyen call ended, Gabriel leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. The legal review had gone as well as he could have hoped. Harrington's team was focused on the wrong details, examining the structure of the investment rather than questioning its basic legitimacy. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Winters. He answered cautiously. It's Harrington. The CEO's voice was clipped. My security team tells me you worked as a janitor at Memorial General until recently. Gabriel had prepared for this moment. I did. Care to explain why that detail was omitted from our discussions? Would you have taken a meeting with a former janitor? Gabriel kept his tone even. After prison, I needed work. Memorial General was hiring. While there, I made connections that eventually helped me rebuild my financial career. It wasn't relevant to our business. I find coincidences troubling, Mr. Winters. Not coincidence. Strategy, Gabriel countered smoothly. I chose Memorial General deliberately. Hospitals are where wealth and power intersect with vulnerability. Board members, donors, administrators, all potential clients once I re-established myself. A pause on the line. An opportunistic approach. I prefer pragmatic. My time there was valuable. I observed how healthcare decisions are made, how money flows through the system. That knowledge informed some of the biotech investments in our portfolio. Gabriel could almost hear Harrington calculating, reassessing. The Patient Assistance Fund, the CEO said finally. You mentioned it when we first met. Hospital gossip. Budget cuts are a common topic among staff. Gabriel kept his voice neutral. I gather it was a controversial decision. Another pause. My attorneys have reviewed your proposal. The structure appears sound, though they've requested some modifications to the escrow arrangements. I anticipated as much. Hamilton Trust is preparing the revised documents now. Good. Harrington's tone remained measured. Despite your unconventional background, Mr. Winters, I'm proceeding with this investment. $10 million, as agreed. You won't regret it. Gabriel allowed himself a small smile. The contracts will be delivered tomorrow. We'll need signatures and the initial transfer by close of business. One more thing, Harrington added. I've instructed my team to maintain enhanced monitoring on this transaction. Any irregularities, any deviation from the agreed terms would be contrary to my interests. Gabriel finished smoothly. I value our nascent relationship, Mr. Harrington. This is just the beginning of what could be a very profitable partnership. After ending the call, Gabriel stared at the complex web of documents surrounding him. The pieces were falling into place. Harrington was proceeding despite his suspicions. Perhaps even because of them. The CEO's ego wouldn't allow him to walk away from a profitable opportunity, and his enhanced scrutiny would focus on the wrong aspects of the transaction. Tomorrow, the contracts would be signed. The money would be transferred, and within 72 hours, the funds would be irretrievably diverted to their real purpose. Gabriel glanced again at Sophia's medical file. All of this, the planning, the risk, the lies, was for her, and for the others like her. For his mother, who had died waiting for treatment that money could have provided. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was he doing the right thing? Using criminal means even for a just cause? His phone buzzed with another text from Elena. Sophia's being moved to intensive care. Doctors say days, maybe less. Gabriel's resolve hardened. The system was broken. Sometimes breaking rules was the only way to fix what truly mattered. Tomorrow, Marcus Harrington would unknowingly become the savior of a child he'd never met. And Gabriel Winters would either achieve redemption or return to prison. Either way, Sophia would live. Marcus stood at the window of his penthouse, contract in hand, pen poised over the signature line. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Cold and remote, much like the decisions he'd made throughout his career. Clinical, calculated, devoid of sentiment. Yet something about this particular decision gave him pause. Gabriel Winters, former Wall Street prodigy, convicted felon, hospital janitor, and now investment advisor, was either running an elaborate con or offering a genuine opportunity. Marcus's instincts, honed over decades of high-stakes deals, were sending mixed signals. His security team had compiled an exhaustive report on Winters. The prison time was real. The mother who died of cancer was real. The janitor position at Memorial General was real. But Apollyon Investments existed in a gray area, legally established, but with minimal history, few clients, and murky funding sources. Perfect for a sophisticated financial crime, or for a legitimate but discreet investment firm. Marcus's phone rang. His chief financial officer. "We've completed the additional verification measures," Reynolds reported. "The escrow arrangements are solid. Hamilton Trust is legitimate and has confirmed they'll hold the funds for 72 hours pending final approval. And the Jensen acquisition? Still on schedule for announcement Monday. Our legal team is finalizing the press release." Marcus nodded, though Reynolds couldn't see him. "And your assessment of Winters' proposal?" A pause. "Aggressive, but technically sound. The return projections are ambitious, but not impossible. If it works as described, the profit would be substantial. And if it doesn't? It's $10 million. Sir, significant, but not catastrophic, given your portfolio. $10 million, a rounding error in his personal wealth. Yet something about this transaction felt weightier than the numbers suggested. Proceed with the transfer, Marcus decided, but maintain the enhanced monitoring protocols through completion. After signing the contract, Marcus poured himself a scotch and returned to the window. He should have felt the usual satisfaction of a deal concluded, a calculated risk taken. Instead, an unfamiliar restlessness stirred within him. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter. "Change my mind about visit. Finals prep. Sorry." The brief message shouldn't have affected him. He'd grown accustomed to Allison's distance. Yet, tonight, it struck deeper than usual. When had communication between them reduced to staccato text messages and obligatory holiday calls since Catherine died? Since he'd thrown himself into work, using Petratech as both shield and weapon against grief. Marcus's thoughts drifted to Memorial General Hospital, to the board meeting where he'd argued so forcefully for cutting the patient assistance fund. He'd presented it as fiscal responsibility, as necessary reallocation of resources, but had it really been about the money, or had it been easier to eliminate a program that helped cancer patients than to face the memories it evoked? On impulse, Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up the hospital's patient record system. His board position gave him access, though he rarely used it for individual cases. He typed Reyes Sophia into the search field. The file appeared. 13-year-old female, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, failed standard protocols, candidate for CAR T therapy, but denied due to financial considerations. Current status, critical, attached, was a note from her oncologist. Patient's mother, Elena Reyes, RN, Memorial General Oncology, has exhausted all financial resources. Patient assistance fund would have covered treatment, considering palliative care options if condition continues to deteriorate. Something cold settled in Marcus's chest. Elena Reyes, the nurse the hospital administrator had mentioned, the one whose case he'd dismissed so easily. He clicked on Elena's employee file. 12 years at Memorial General, exemplary performance reviews, specialized in oncology care, single mother. Marcus closed the laptop, suddenly uncomfortable with his digital voyeurism. This was exactly the kind of emotional thinking he'd trained himself to avoid. Individual cases, individual tragedies, couldn't drive policy decisions. The hospital served thousands of patients. Resources had to be allocated efficiently. Yet as he stared at the city below, Marcus found himself wondering about the nurse and her daughter, about what it must be like to work in a hospital that could save your child but wouldn't, because of a policy you had no power to change. His phone buzzed again. The funds transfer confirmation. $10 million to the escrow account at Hamilton. Trust, awaiting final release after the verification period. In 72 hours, that money would either multiply as Winters had promised or disappear in an elaborate fraud. Either way, it would change nothing for Sophia Reyes, unless... Marcus opened his laptop again, navigating to the hospital's donation portal. His finger hovered over the keyboard. One substantial anonymous donation, earmarked specifically for Sophia's treatment, would solve the immediate problem, but it would raise questions. Why this patient? Why now? The board would want explanations. His carefully constructed reputation as a hard-nosed pragmatist would be compromised. Marcus closed the laptop without making the donation. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Some walls, once breached, couldn't be rebuilt. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Memorial General for a quarterly review meeting. He'd attended dozens of similar meetings over the years, walking the same corridors, nodding to the same staff, maintaining the same professional distance. Today felt different. As he passed the pediatric oncology ward, Marcus slowed his pace. Through the glass walls, he could see children in various states of treatment, some playing, some sleeping, all bearing the unmistakable marks of serious illness. Bald heads, thin limbs, dark circles under young eyes. A memory surfaced. Catherine. In her hospital bed, once vibrant body ravaged by cancer and chemicals meant to cure it. The way she'd looked at him in those final days, seeking not the powerful executive but the man she'd married, the man he'd been before ambition consumed him. Mr. Harrington? Marcus turned to find the hospital administrator, Dr. Patel, approaching, with a tablet in hand. "Our meeting isn't for another 20 minutes, Patel said, clearly surprised to find the CEO in this part of the hospital. "I was just," Marcus gestured vaguely toward the ward, "familiarizing myself with the departments affected by our recent decisions." Patel's expression remained neutral, though something like hope flickered in his eyes. "Actually, I was hoping to discuss the Patient Assistance Fund again. Perhaps a partial reinstatement." The board was clear. Marcus cut him off, his tone automatically shifting to boardroom mode. "The decision stands." Patel's hope dimmed. "Of course. I'll see you in the conference room." As the administrator walked away, Marcus found himself still standing at the window to the pediatric ward. One of the nurses inside, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, was adjusting a young girl's IV. The girl looked desperately ill, her skin nearly translucent, her body fragile against the white sheets. With a jolt, Marcus realized he was looking at Sophia Reyes and her mother Elena. He watched as Elena smoothed her daughter's hair with such gentle tenderness that something cracked in Marcus's carefully maintained facade. When was the last time he'd touched another person with such care? When was the last time he'd allowed himself to feel anything beyond the cold satisfaction of business success? Marcus turned away abruptly, striding toward the executive wing with renewed purpose. He had a board meeting to run, financial reports to review, strategic decisions to make. Sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford. Yet as he took his seat at the head of the conference table, Marcus found it difficult to focus on the spreadsheets before him. The image of Elena Reyes with her daughter kept intruding on his thoughts, overlaid with memories of Catherine in her final days. For the first time in years, Marcus Harrington found himself questioning not just a specific decision, but the entire framework of values that had guided his life since losing his wife. And somewhere in that questioning, a line was beginning to blur, a boundary between the man he had become and the man he might still be. The board meeting concluded with the usual efficiency that Marcus demanded. Budget reports reviewed, strategic initiatives approved, concerns noted but ultimately dismissed. Business as usual at Memorial General Hospital. Yet something felt off balance. Marcus found himself uncharacteristically distracted, his legendary focus compromised by thoughts of the Reyes family, of Gabriel Winters' suspicious investment, of his own daughter's continued distance. "I'd like to see the oncology ward renovations," he announced abruptly as the meeting ended, surprising even himself with the request. Dr. Patel blinked. "Of course, though they're only in the planning phase. I understand. I'd like to see the current state before approving the expenditure," was a reasonable pretext, though Marcus wasn't entirely sure of his true motivation. Something was drawing him back to the pediatric wing, some need he couldn't quite articulate. As they walked, Patel briefed him on the proposed changes: updated treatment rooms, more comfortable family areas, improved isolation facilities for immunocompromised patients. Marcus listened with half an ear, his mind elsewhere. "This is our main treatment area," Patel said, as they entered a large room with recliners arranged around its perimeter. Children of various ages sat receiving chemotherapy, some watching tablets, others sleeping, a few playing quiet games with volunteers. Marcus nodded, maintaining his professional mask, while inwardly recoiling at the sight of so much suffering contained in such young bodies. He'd avoided this part of the hospital during previous visits, telling himself it was unnecessary for his board duties. Now he wondered if the avoidance had been more personal, more cowardly. "And through here are our inpatient rooms, for those requiring more intensive care," Patel continued, leading him down a corridor lined with private rooms. They passed several rooms with closed doors, before reaching one that was open. Inside, a teenage girl sat propped up in bed, her thin frame dwarfed by medical equipment. Despite her obvious illness, she was focused intently on a sketch pad, her brow furrowed in concentration. Marcus recognized her immediately from the file, photo, and his earlier glimpse. Elena Reyes. He meant to continue walking, to maintain the professional distance he'd cultivated for years, but Sophia looked up at that moment, her dark eyes meeting his with unexpected directness. "Are you a doctor?" she asked, her voice surprisingly strong despite her fragile appearance. Patel started to intervene, but Marcus found himself stepping into the room. "No, I'm Mr. Harrington. I'm on the hospital's board." "Oh." Sophia studied him with the unfiltered curiosity of youth. "So you're like the boss?" A smile tugged at Marcus's lips, the first genuine one in longer than he could remember. "Something like that." Sophia nodded seriously. "My mom says the bosses make the important decisions, like who gets treatment and who doesn't." The directness of her statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. From the doorway, Patel made a small sound of discomfort. "That's a simplified view," Marcus said carefully. "But it's true, isn't it?" Sophia tilted her head. "Someone decided the special treatment I need costs too much." Marcus found himself at a rare loss for words. In boardrooms, he was known for his quick, incisive responses. Here, faced with a child's unvarnished truth, his usual rhetorical weapons seemed inadequate. "Healthcare decisions are complicated," he finally managed. Sophia seemed to accept this non-answer, turning her attention back to her sketch. "I'm drawing what I want to be when I grow up." "Want to see?" The question carried a devastating weight, given her prognosis. Without waiting for his response, Sophia held up her drawing, a figure in scrubs, standing beside a hospital bed. "A nurse like your mother?" Marcus asked. Sophia nodded. "But specialized in cancer research, so I can help make the medicines cost less." She looked at him with those direct eyes again. "That would make the boss's decisions easier, wouldn't it?" Something twisted in Marcus's chest. "Yes," he said softly, "it would." A noise at the door drew their attention. Elena Reyes stood frozen in the entrance, a medication tray in her hands, her expression cycling rapidly from surprise to recognition to barely contained anger. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her voice tight. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Ms. Reyes," Marcus nodded, struggling to maintain his usual composure. "I was just touring the facility with Dr. Patel." "Mom, Mr. Harrington is one of the bosses," Sophia explained, oblivious to the tension. "I showed him my drawing." Elena moved to her daughter's side, placing herself subtly but unmistakably between Sophia and Marcus. "That's nice, sweetheart, but it's time for your medication, and I'm sure Mr. Harrington has important meetings to attend." The dismissal was clear. Marcus found himself wanting to explain, to defend, to somehow bridge the gulf between them. But what could he say? That he was sorry? That he was reconsidering? That for the first time in years, he was questioning the cold calculations that had guided his decisions? Instead, he simply nodded. "It was nice to meet you, Sophia." "You too." "Mr. Boss Man," Sophia replied with a weak smile. "Maybe you can come back when I'm feeling better and see my other drawings." The optimism in her voice, the assumption of a future that medical science said she wouldn't have, was the final crack in Marcus's carefully constructed armor. "I'd like that," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. In the hallway, Patel watched him carefully. "Sophia is one of our special cases," he said. "Brilliant girl. Her mother has been with us for 12 years. One of our best nurses. And the treatment she needs? CAR-T therapy. Excellent success rates for her type of leukemia, but expensive and not covered by their insurance, without the patient assistance. Fund, Patel let the sentence hang unfinished. Marcus was saved from responding by his phone. A text from his security chief. Irregularity detected in Winters' transaction. Call immediately. I need to take this, he told Patel. We'll continue the tour another time. Finding a quiet corner in the executive wing, Marcus called his security team. What irregularity? He demanded. Sir, we've been monitoring the escrow account as instructed. There was an unusual pattern of test transactions, small amounts moving in and out of the account. It's often a precursor to fraudulent activity. Has the main transfer been compromised? Not yet. The funds are still secure in escrow, but we have concerns about the release protocols. There are vulnerabilities that weren't apparent in our initial review. Marcus processed this information, weighing it against his earlier suspicions about Winters. Lock it down. Nothing moves without my direct authorization, and I want a complete security audit of Hamilton Trust. Already underway, sir. After ending the call, Marcus stood motionless, his mind racing. The timing was suspicious. Irregularities appearing just after he'd met Sophia, just as he was beginning to question the very decisions that had put her life at risk. Was it coincidence, or something more calculated? His thoughts turned to Gabriel Winters, the former janitor who had mysteriously transformed into a sophisticated financial advisor, the man whose mother had died of cancer. The investment opportunity that had seemed too perfectly tailored to Marcus's interests. The pieces were beginning to align in a pattern that suggested not just fraud, but something more personal, more targeted. Marcus pulled out his phone again, this time calling his executive assistant. Cancel my afternoon meetings, and get me everything we have on Gabriel Winters. Everything. As he walked toward the hospital exit, Marcus passed by Sophia's room once more. Elena was sitting beside her daughter now, helping her with her sketch, their heads bent together in a tableau of love that stirred something long dormant in Marcus's heart. For a moment, he saw Catherine there instead of Elena. Catherine as she might have been if they'd had the child they'd planned before cancer intervened. The vision was so vivid, so painful, that Marcus had to look away. When he glanced back, Elena had noticed him watching. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, hers filled with protective defiance, his with something he couldn't quite name, not quite regret, not quite resolve, but something shifting, like ice beginning to crack under pressure. Without a word, Marcus continued toward the exit, his steps quickening as decision crystallized into action. Whatever game Gabriel Winters was playing, whatever fraud he was attempting, Marcus would uncover it, and perhaps in doing so, he would find a way to help Sophia Reyes without compromising the principles that had guided his life for so long. Or perhaps he would finally recognize that some principles deserved to be compromised. Gabriel sat in a rented office space downtown, 3 laptops open before him, each displaying different aspects of his financial architecture. The plan was entering its most critical phase, the sequence of transfers that would move Harrington's money through a labyrinth of accounts before reaching its final destination. His phone rang. Harrington. Gabriel took a deep breath, centering himself before answering. Mr. Harrington, I was about to call you. Were you? Harrington's voice was cool, controlled. To explain the irregular transactions my security team detected, perhaps? Gabriel had anticipated this. Standard verification protocols. Hamilton, trust requires test transactions to confirm the integrity of the transfer pathways before moving significant sums. I should have warned you. Indeed, you should have. A pause. My team has concerns about the release mechanisms. Understandable. Gabriel kept his tone even, but unnecessary. The escrow protections are intact. Your funds remain secure until final authorization, which requires my direct approval. Of course. Gabriel monitored the screens before him, watching as the preliminary system checks completed successfully. The Jensen announcement is tomorrow morning. Timing is crucial. Another pause. Longer this time. I've been looking into your background more thoroughly, Mr. Winters. Gabriel tensed but kept his voice neutral. Find anything interesting? Several things, including your employment at Memorial General coinciding with certain board decisions, cuts to departments that might have saved patients like your mother. So Harrington had made the connection. It was sooner than Gabriel had anticipated, but not catastrophic. Not yet. My time at Memorial General was enlightening, Gabriel said, carefully. Healthcare is a business like any other, with winners and losers determined by those who control the capital. A rather cynical view, but accurate, wouldn't you say? After all, You've made similar decisions throughout your career. Harrington didn't respond directly to the challenge. The Jensen acquisition proceeds as planned. Announcement at 9 a.m. I'll authorize the release of funds at that time, assuming all verifications are complete. They will be. Gabriel allowed himself a small smile. I appreciate your thoroughness, Mr. Harrington. It's rare to find investors who understand the nuances of these transactions. After ending the call, Gabriel returned his attention to the computers. Harrington was suspicious but proceeding. The CEO's ego wouldn't allow him to back out now, not when millions in potential profit awaited. Little did he know that those millions would never materialize, at least, not for him. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Sophia's number's worse. Dr. Martinez talking hospice. He closed his eyes briefly, allowing the weight of responsibility to settle on his shoulders. Everything had to work perfectly. Now, there was no margin for error. No room for delay. Across town, Elena sat beside Sophia's bed, watching her daughter's labored breathing. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and the hiss of oxygen. Dr. Martinez had been gentle but clear. Without the CAR-T therapy, Sophia had days, perhaps only hours. Ms. Reyes? Elena looked up to find a hospital administrator she didn't recognize standing in the doorway. Yes? I need to speak with you regarding your daughter's treatment options. The woman glanced at Sophia, who was mercifully asleep. Perhaps outside? In the hallway, the administrator consulted her tablet. I'm reviewing Sophia's case. Dr. Martinez has recommended the CAR-T therapy as a final option, which we can't afford, Elena said tiredly. We've been through this. That's what I needed to discuss. The administrator looked up. The hospital has received an anonymous donation to the pediatric oncology department, with specific provisions for reinstating the patient assistance fund. Sophia's treatment would be fully covered. Elena stared, certain she'd misheard. What? The paperwork is being processed now. Dr. Martinez has already ordered the treatment to begin preparation. But who? Elena started, then stopped herself. It didn't matter. How soon can she start? The therapy requires some preparation, but we can begin the process immediately. The administrator smiled. It's quite remarkable timing. Remarkable indeed. Elena returned to Sophia's room, her mind racing. An anonymous donation, arriving precisely when Sophia had run out of options. It couldn't be coincidence. She thought of Gabriel Winters, the mysterious janitor turned businessman who had promised to help. Had he somehow made this happen? But how could a former maintenance worker possibly arrange a donation large enough to reinstate an entire hospital fund? Sophia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Mom, why are you smiling? Elena hadn't realized she was. Good news, sunshine. Really good news. The doctors are going to start that special treatment we talked about. Sophia's eyes widened. The expensive one? But how? Someone made a donation to the hospital. Someone who wanted to help kids like you. A superhero, Sophia whispered, the childhood innocence she rarely showed anymore, briefly illuminating her face. Maybe. Elena smoothed her daughter's thin hair. Rest now. Things are going to get better. As Sophia drifted back to sleep, Elena's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It's done. The fund has been reinstated. Sophia will get her treatment. Across the city, in his gleaming penthouse, Marcus Harrington stood at the window, phone in hand, reading a similar message from the hospital administrator. Anonymous donation received. Pediatric Oncology Patient Assistance Fund reinstated. Full board notification to follow. The timing was too perfect, too calculated. Marcus's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Whatever Gabriel Winters was planning with the investment scheme, it somehow connected to Memorial General, and specifically, to the fund Marcus had eliminated. Yet the Jensen acquisition announcement was still hours away. The escrow funds remained secure, awaiting his final authorization. If Winters had arranged the hospital donation, where had the money come from? Marcus dialed his security chief. I want real-time monitoring of all my personal accounts. And full surveillance on Gabriel Winters. Something's happening, and I want to know what it is before I release those escrow funds. Sir, the security chief hesitated. Surveillance might not be legal without... I'm not concerned with legalities at the moment. Marcus cut him off. Just do it. After ending the call, Marcus pulled up Sophia's file again on his tablet. Her treatment was now authorized, the financial barriers removed. The girl would get her chance. He should have felt relieved, perhaps even vindicated in his suspicions about Winters. Instead, An uncomfortable question nagged at him. Why hadn't he simply made the donation himself when he'd first read her file? What did it say about the man he'd become that it had taken a suspected con artist to do what he, with all his billions, had refused to do? Morning would bring the Jensen announcement, and the final phase of whatever game Winters was playing. Marcus would be ready. He would uncover the truth, protect his assets, and expose the fraud. Yet as he prepared for bed, Marcus found himself hoping that, whatever happened tomorrow, Sophia Reyes would still get her treatment. Some things, it seemed, mattered more than money, a realization that would have shocked the board members who knew him only as the Vulture. Perhaps it shocked Marcus himself most of all. Dawn found Marcus already at his desk, reviewing every piece of information his team had gathered on Gabriel Winters. The picture emerging was troubling yet incomplete. Fragments of a life marked by brilliance, tragedy, and possible deception. Winters' Wall Street career was legitimate and impressive. His conviction for securities fraud was connected to his mother's cancer treatments. His time at Memorial General was confirmed by employment records. But Apollyon Investments remained murky, with inconsistencies that suggested a hastily constructed facade. "Sir, the Jensen announcement is scheduled for 30 minutes from now," his assistant reminded him. Marcus nodded, eyes still on the reports. "And Winters? Our surveillance team reports he's been in a downtown office since early morning. Multiple computers, heavy online activity. The escrow account? Secure. No withdrawals can occur without your authorization code." Marcus leaned back, weighing his options. He could cancel the investment entirely, the safest choice given his suspicions. Yet part of him wanted to see this play out, to understand what Winters was really after. His phone chimed with a message from the hospital administrator. CAR-T therapy for Sophia Reyes initiated this morning. Preliminary response positive. The update shouldn't have mattered to him personally. It was one patient among thousands, one treatment among many funded by the mysteriously reinstated assistance program. Yet Marcus found himself relieved. "Sir," his security chief appeared in the doorway. "We've detected something unusual. The donation to Memorial General. We've traced it through several shells, but it appears to originate from Conman account, registered to a foundation called Second Chance. And who controls this foundation? That's what's interesting. It was established 6 months ago by an anonymous benefactor, but the legal structure mirrors aspects of the investment vehicle Winters proposed to you." Marcus's suspicions solidified. He's already moving money. Before the Jensen announcement. Before the escrow release. It appears so, but we can't confirm the funds came from you. All your accounts show normal activity. Then where did he get the money? Marcus demanded. The security chief looked uncomfortable. "We're still investigating. But there's something else. The donation has very specific provisions. It can only be used for pediatric oncology, with priority for leukemia patients whose families have demonstrated financial need. And it mandates the reinstatement of the patient assistance fund you recently voted to eliminate." It was too targeted to be coincidence. Winters wasn't just running a financial scam. He was deliberately undoing Marcus's board decisions at Memorial General. But why? Personal vendetta over his mother's death? Misguided sense of justice? Or something more calculated? "The Jensen announcement is live," his assistant called from the outer office. Marcus turned to the television mounted on his wall. The CEO of Petratech appeared at a podium, announcing the acquisition of Jensen Biotech in confident corporate language that disguised the hostile nature of the takeover. The wheels were in motion. According to Winters' investment strategy, this was the trigger point, the moment when their positioned assets would begin generating the promised returns, or the moment when the real scheme would activate. Marcus's phone rang. Gabriel Winters. "I assume you're watching the announcement," Winters said without preamble. "I am." Marcus kept his tone neutral. "Congratulations seem to be in order. The acquisition is proceeding exactly as you predicted." "Indeed. The market is already responding. Our positions are optimally placed for the sequence I outlined. Then I should authorize the escrow release." A pause. That would be the logical next step. "Before I do," Marcus said carefully, "I'm curious about something. The pediatric oncology fund at Memorial General was mysteriously reinstated yesterday. Anonymous donation. Very specifically targeted." Another pause. Longer this time. "A fortunate coincidence for the patients who need it." "I don't believe in coincidences, Mr. Winters, especially not when they align so perfectly with conversations we've had. Perhaps someone recognized a need and had the means to address it." Winters' voice remained even. "Not unlike your position. The implication was clear, and it struck uncomfortably close to Marcus's earlier self-questioning. The donation was traced to a foundation called Second Chance, established 6 months ago, coincidentally around the time you began working at Memorial General. An interesting name, Winters sounded unperturbed. Rather apt for a medical charity, or for someone looking to redeem past mistakes. Marcus watched the stock tickers scrolling across his screen. Jensen Biotech was falling, as predicted, while Petrotech rose. Did you arrange that donation, Mr. Winters? Mr. Harrington, the market is moving exactly as projected. Our investment window is optimal right now. Perhaps we could discuss hospital donations after you've authorized the escrow release? The deflection was smooth but telling. Marcus's certainty grew. Winters was behind the donation, but the source of the funds remained a mystery. I'm authorizing the release now, Marcus decided, entering his code into the secure banking app. But our conversation isn't over. I wouldn't expect it to be. Was that satisfaction in Winters' voice? The first returns should begin appearing in the designated accounts within hours. After ending the call, Marcus turned to his security chief. The funds are moving. Track every transaction, every transfer. I want to know exactly where my $10 million goes. Yes, sir. And if we detect fraud, we gather evidence and contact authorities. Marcus's expression hardened. No one steals from me. Yet even as he said it, Marcus wondered if theft was really Winters' objective. The elaborate nature of the scheme, the connection to Memorial General, the precisely targeted donation, it suggested something more complex than simple financial fraud. His phone chimed again. Another update from the hospital. Sophia Reyes responding. Well to initial treatment. Dr. Martinez optimistic. Marcus stared at the message, an uncomfortable thought forming. What if Winters' plan wasn't about stealing the money at all? What if it was about forcing Marcus to unknowingly fund the very program he'd voted to eliminate? It would be an elegant revenge, using Marcus's own money to undo his decision, while potentially generating legitimate returns that would prevent him from claiming fraud. Sir, his assistant appeared at the door. Your daughter is on line 1. Marcus blinked in surprise. Allison rarely called, especially during business hours. Put her through. Dad? His daughter's voice sounded hesitant, unfamiliar after so many months of minimal contact. Allison, is everything all right? Yes, she paused. I saw the Jensen acquisition announcement. That's the company working on those cancer treatments, right? The ones that might have helped Mom. The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd never discussed the acquisition's connection to Catherine's illness with Allison. How had she made that connection? It is, he confirmed carefully. I thought so. Another pause. Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe I could come home this weekend after all. If the offer still stands, Marcus found himself momentarily speechless. After months of declined invitations and brief formal text exchanges, this sudden shift was jarring. Of course, he managed finally. The jet is yours whenever you want. Thanks. I'll text details later. Allison's voice softened slightly. And Dad, it's good that those treatments will continue development under Petrotech. Mom would have liked that. After the call ended, Marcus sat motionless, mind racing. First the mysterious hospital donation, then Sophia's treatment approval, now Allison's unexpected outreach. Events were aligning in ways that felt less like coincidence and more like careful orchestration, but that was impossible. No one could manipulate so many separate factors, unless Marcus returned to the reports on Winters, scanning for anything connecting him to Allison. Nothing obvious appeared, yet the timing was too perfect to dismiss. His security chief returned, expression grave. Sir, we've tracked the first transfers from the escrow account. They're moving through exactly the pathways outlined in Winters' documentation. Legitimate transactions? Technically, yes. But there's something unusual about the secondary accounts. They're registered to entities that appear connected to the Second Chance Foundation. The pieces clicked into place. Winters wasn't stealing the money. He was laundering it through legitimate investments into his foundation, which would then fund the hospital program. Marcus should have been furious. Instead, he found himself oddly impressed by the elegant design of the scheme. Winters had created a situation where Marcus would either have to accept the diversion of funds to a charitable cause or admit he'd been duped, damaging his reputation and potentially exposing aspects of the Jensen acquisition that wouldn't withstand regulatory scrutiny. Keep monitoring, Marcus instructed, but don't intervene yet. I want to see exactly how this plays out. As his security team continued tracking the money trail, Marcus found himself wondering about Sophia Reyes, the treatment she was receiving. Right now, treatment that might save her life was apparently being funded by his own money, redirected against his will, yet he had authorized the transfer. He had proceeded despite his suspicions. On some level, had he wanted this outcome? The thought was disturbing, challenging the careful compartmentalization that had defined his life since Catherine's death. Marcus Harrington, the Vulture, didn't make decisions based on individual cases or emotional considerations. He analyzed, calculated, and executed with cold precision. At least that's who he had been until now. Rain fell in sheets across the city, turning the evening streetlights into blurred halos. Gabriel stood in the hospital parking garage, watching droplets collect and slide down the concrete pillars. His work was nearly complete. The final transfers were processing, moving Harrington's money through the intricate pathways he'd designed, ultimately to fund the pediatric oncology program and Sophia's treatment. It wasn't technically stealing. The investments were real. They would generate actual returns. Modest compared to what he'd promised Harrington, but legitimate nonetheless. The structure ensured that attempts to reclaim the funds would trigger regulatory scrutiny that neither Harrington nor Petratech could afford. Gabriel had won, so why did victory feel so hollow? His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Sophia's responding to treatment. Doctors are cautiously optimistic. I don't know how you did this, but thank you. That was why he'd done it. For Sophia. For Elena. For his mother who had died while he sat in a prison cell. For all the patients whose lives were reduced to numbers. On spreadsheets by men like Harrington. The sound of expensive tires on wet pavement drew Gabriel's attention. A familiar Rolls-Royce glided into the garage, coming to a stop several spaces away. The rear door opened, and Marcus Harrington emerged. Umbrella in hand, Gabriel tensed. This confrontation was inevitable, but he hadn't expected it so soon, or here. Mr. Winters, Harrington approached with measured steps. Or should I call you the janitor who mopped these very floors? The convicted felon? The architect of an elaborate financial deception, all accurate descriptions. Gabriel didn't move, though I prefer the man who ensured Sophia Reyes got her treatment. Ah, yes, Sophia. Harrington stopped a few feet away, the umbrella tilted slightly to shield them both from the garage's dripping ceiling. The daughter of a nurse, the child whose life apparently justifies fraud. Not fraud. Gabriel met his gaze steadily. Every investment is real. Every return will materialize, though not at the levels I projected. The only deception was the ultimate destination of the funds. My money. Harrington's voice remained calm, but his eyes were hard. Diverted without my consent to a foundation you control, which then donated to the very hospital program I voted to eliminate. Poetic justice, wouldn't you say? Gabriel allowed himself a small smile. Your wealth, accumulated through cold calculation and disregard for human cost, now saving lives you deemed too expensive to protect. Harrington studied him, head tilted. Slightly. You've gone to extraordinary lengths, Mr. Winters. Prison if caught. Again, all for one child you barely know. Not just for Sophia. For every patient who needs treatment their family can't afford. The foundation will continue funding the program indefinitely, with my money. A fraction of your wealth, Gabriel countered. 10 million you won't miss, diverted to a cause that actually matters. Harrington was silent for a moment, rainwater dripping from his umbrella to form small puddles between them. You contacted my daughter. The statement caught Gabriel off guard. What? Allison. She called me today, mentioning the Jensen acquisition's connection to cancer treatments that might have helped her mother. Information she couldn't have known unless someone told her. Gabriel shook his head. I never contacted your daughter. Then how? Your security isn't as thorough as you think. I accessed your personal files at Petratech. Read about Catherine's treatments. The experimental protocols tried too late. When I researched Jensen Biotech, I discovered they were developing refinements to those same protocols. So, you leaked that information to Allison? To manipulate me. Through my daughter? No. Gabriel's denial was firm. Whatever contact you had with her was coincidental. I would never involve your daughter in this. Harrington studied him, weighing the denial. My security team has been tracking your transfers. Clever structure. Difficult to unwind without triggering regulatory flags that would raise questions about the Jensen acquisition itself. As designed, Gabriel nodded. You have two choices. Accept that your money is now funding pediatric cancer treatments, or fight to reclaim it and risk exposing aspects of the Jensen deal that might not withstand scrutiny. A sophisticated trap, Harrington almost looked impressed. You've been planning this since you started working here as a janitor. I came here looking for work after prison, nothing more. Gabriel gestured toward the hospital. But seeing the impact of budget decisions on real patients, decisions made by men in boardrooms who never witnessed the consequences, it changed my perspective. And my presence on the hospital board made me a convenient target. You made yourself a target. When you eliminated the Patient Assistance Fund, Gabriel's voice hardened. When you decided a 13-year-old girl's life wasn't worth the money that would save it, Harrington's expression remained impassive. You realize I could have you arrested right now. My security detail is watching us as we speak. You could, but would that recover your money? Would it protect your company from the questions that would arise? Would it erase the fact that Elena Reyes is currently receiving treatment funded by your redirected millions? They stood in silence, the rains patter against the garage roof filling the space between them. Two men from different worlds, connected by decisions that had rippled outward to affect lives neither had fully considered. Why did you agree to meet me? Gabriel asked finally. You could have sent security to arrest me. You could have launched legal proceedings. Why come yourself? Harrington seemed to consider the question carefully. Curiosity, perhaps. I wanted to understand what drives a man to risk everything for strangers, the same thing that once drove you to commit fraud for your mother's treatments. Harrington's voice was unexpectedly gentle. The difference is, you were caught. I wasn't. The admission stunned Gabriel into silence. Of all the responses he had anticipated, this confession wasn't among them. Early in my career, Harrington continued, Catherine needed experimental treatments. Insurance denied coverage. I manipulated company funds, created false records. The money was eventually repaid, the discrepancies buried. No one ever knew. Yet you still eliminated the Patient Assistance Fund. Gabriel's voice held disbelief. Knowing what it's like to face that impossible choice, I compartmentalized, separated personal experience from business decisions. Harrington looked past him toward the hospital. It's what made me successful, what earned me the nickname, the Vulture, what cost me my relationship with my daughter, what made me the perfect target for your scheme. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof in a chaotic rhythm. Gabriel studied the man before him, not just the billionaire CEO, but someone shaped by the same desperate choices he himself had made. The parallel was disturbing, suggesting a path Gabriel might have taken under different circumstances. What happens now? He asked. Harrington seemed to come to a decision. Sophia's treatment continues. The Patient Assistance Fund remains intact. And me? That depends. Harrington fixed him with a penetrating gaze. Was this purely about revenge, or do you actually care about these patients? Both, initially, Gabriel admitted. But seeing Sophia, talking with Elena, it became about more than revenge. Harrington nodded slowly. My security team is waiting for instructions. One word from me, and you'll be in custody, facing charges that will send you back to prison for decades. Gabriel steeled himself, waiting for the inevitable. However, Harrington continued, that would be counterproductive. The money has been moved. The foundation established. The treatments funded. Arresting you changes none of that. So you're letting me go? Gabriel couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. Not exactly. Harrington's expression was unreadable. I'm offering you a choice. Disappear. Leave the city. Abandon the foundation. Never contact me or anyone at Memorial General. Again, or help me make this right. Properly, legally, with full transparency and none of the deception. It was the last thing Gabriel had expected. What are you saying? I'm saying that your financial expertise, directed toward legitimate philanthropy, instead of elaborate cons, could do more good than this one-time redirection of funds. Gabriel stared at him, searching for the trap. Why would you offer me that after what I've done? Because meeting Sophia changed something, Harrington admitted quietly. Seeing Elena with her daughter reminded me of Catherine, of the man I was, before I locked away everything that felt like weakness. The vulture finding his heart? Gabriel couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice, more like remembering it was there all along. Harrington extended his hand. So, Mr. Winters, which will it be? Disappearance or redemption? Gabriel looked at the offered hand, weighing possibilities, calculating risks as he'd done throughout his financial career. The choice before him wasn't just about his future. It was about Sophia's, and countless other patients who might benefit from a legitimate foundation with Harrington's resources behind it. Redemption, he said finally, taking Harrington's hand, but on one condition. Name it. Sophia Reyes receives the best care available, no matter the cost, no matter what happens between us. Harrington nodded. Already arranged. And the patient assistance fund will be expanded, not just reinstated. As they shook hands in the dim garage, rain still falling around them, Gabriel wondered if he was making another mistake, trusting the man he'd targeted for destruction. Yet something in Harrington's expression suggested a genuine shift, not a complete transformation, but a crack in the armor that had protected and isolated him for years. "We should check on Sophia," Harrington said, releasing Gabriel's hand. "I'd like to see how the treatment is progressing." Together, they walked toward the hospital entrance. An unlikely alliance formed in the shadows of a parking garage, connected by a child neither had known a month ago, but who had somehow altered the course of both their lives. The morning dawned, clear after the previous night's rain, sunlight reflecting off puddles that dotted the cemetery paths. Marcus stood alone before Catherine's grave, the marble headstone gleaming white against the green grass. He came here rarely, the memories too painful, the regrets too numerous. But today, something compelled him to visit, to stand before the wife he'd lost and confront the man he'd become in her absence. "I met a girl," he said softly, feeling slightly foolish talking to a headstone yet needing to speak the words aloud. "Sophia, she has leukemia, like Janet Miller's daughter. Remember them? From our old neighborhood." The silence that answered was expected but still painful. "She's getting treatment now. Treatment I initially denied her through a board vote." Marcus clasped his hands behind his back. "I've been making decisions that you would have hated, that I would have hated before Catherine's death, before he'd walled off his emotions as a liability, before the Vulture had eclipsed. Marcus Harrington, I did what I swore I'd never do. I became my father." The admission felt like releasing a weight he'd carried for years. Cold, calculating, seeing people as numbers on a spreadsheet. A light breeze stirred the flowers he'd brought, scattering a few petals across the grave. A man named Gabriel Winters, former convict, surprisingly principled despite his methods, orchestrated an elaborate scheme to use my own money to help this girl, to force me to do the right thing when I'd refused to do it myself. Marcus smiled ruefully. "You would have liked him, I think. You always did appreciate people who stood up to me." The distance, a groundskeeper was mowing, the soft hum providing background to Marcus's one-sided conversation. "I had a choice last night. Press charges, send him back to prison, fight to reclaim the money. All things the Marcus Harrington of yesterday would have done without hesitation." He paused. "Instead, I offered him a chance at redemption, at using his skills for something better." The irony wasn't lost on him. Offering redemption when he himself needed it just as badly. "Allison called," he continued. "She's coming home this weekend. First time in almost a year. I'm not sure what changed her mind, but He hesitated. "I want to be the father she deserves. The man you married, not the one I became after losing you." Marcus checked his watch. He had a board meeting at Memorial General in an hour. A meeting where he would propose significant changes to the hospital's financial priorities. "I have to go now, but I'll be back sooner this time." He touched the headstone briefly. "I think I'm finally ready to remember without it destroying me." As Marcus walked back to his car, he felt lighter somehow, as if speaking aloud the truths he'd been avoiding had broken something loose within him. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time in years, he was looking ahead with something other than cold ambition driving him. The hospital boardroom was full when Marcus arrived. Word had spread about the anonymous donation and the reinstatement of the patient assistance fund. Speculation was rampant about who might have been behind it. "Before we begin the regular agenda," Marcus said, as he took his place at the head of the table, "I'd like to address the recent donation to pediatric oncology." The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. "I've been in contact with the donor," Marcus continued, choosing his words carefully, "and I've arranged for additional funding to expand the program beyond its previous scope." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. "Additionally, I'm proposing a comprehensive review of all our patient assistance programs, with an eye toward expansion rather than contraction." Dr. Patel stared at him in open astonishment. "Mr. Harrington, with all due respect, this represents a complete reversal of your previous position." "It does." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Sometimes we need to reconsider our priorities." "May I ask what prompted this change?" another board member inquired. Marcus thought of Sophia, of Elena, of Gabriel Winters in the rain-soaked parking garage, of Catherine's grave and Allison's unexpected call. "Let's just say I've had the opportunity to see our budget decisions from a different perspective." He opened the folder before him. "Now, Regarding the proposed expansion, the meeting proceeded, with Marcus guiding the discussion toward a more balanced approach to the hospital's financial management. It wouldn't be easy. Resources were still finite, difficult choices still necessary, but the cold calculation that had previously dominated would be tempered with consideration for individual impact. Afterward, Marcus made his way to the pediatric oncology ward. He found Sophia's room easily, having memorized the number from her file. He paused outside, watching through the glass as Elena read to her daughter from a worn paperback, their heads close together in a tableau of love that stirred something. Long dormant in his heart, Sophia looked different already. Still fragile, still clearly ill, but with a vitality that had been absent during their previous encounter. The CAR-T therapy was working. Elena glanced up, noticing him watching. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness to something more complex. After saying something to Sophia, she stepped out into the hallway. "Mr. Harrington." Her tone was cautious. "This is unexpected. I wanted to check on Sophia's progress." He kept his voice professional, though the context was anything but. "I understand the new treatment is showing promising results." "It is." Elena studied him. "Though I'm curious why the CEO of Petratech and chairman of the hospital board is personally checking on my daughter." Marcus considered several responses, settling on the simplest truth. "Because I was wrong, Ms. Reyes. About the patient assistance fund. About prioritizing spreadsheets over people. And I'm trying to make it right." Elena's eyes widened slightly. "You know about the anonymous donation." "I do." He didn't elaborate, recognizing that the full truth about Gabriel's scheme wasn't his to share. "Sophia's treatment will continue uninterrupted, regardless of cost. You have my personal guarantee." "Why?" Elena asked, the single word containing volumes of justifiable suspicion. "Because meeting Sophia reminded me of things I've spent years trying to forget." Marcus glanced toward the room where the girl was sketching something in a notebook. "My wife died of cancer 5 years ago. Pancreatic. By the time experimental treatments were approved, it was too late." Understanding dawned in Elena's eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you." Marcus straightened his tie, a habitual gesture, when uncomfortable emotions threatened. "May I speak with Sophia briefly?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "She's having a good day. 5 minutes." Inside the room, Sophia looked up from her drawing, her face brightening with recognition. "Mr. Bossman, you came back." Despite himself, Marcus smiled at the nickname. "I did. I heard you're feeling better. The new medicine is working," Sophia confirmed. "Dr. Martinez says my numbers are improving. Look, I can sit up by myself today." She demonstrated with pride, and Marcus found himself genuinely impressed by the small victory that meant so much. "That's excellent progress." He gestured to her sketch pad. "Another drawing of your future career?" Sophia nodded, turning the pad to show him. "It's me as a research doctor, finding ways to make the expensive medicines cost less, so more kids can get them." The simple wisdom in her words, uncompromised by corporate politics or profit motives, struck Marcus deeply. This child, facing her own mortality, was thinking about how to help others. "That's a worthy goal," he said softly. "The world needs more doctors like the one you'll become." Sophia beamed at him, and in her smile, Marcus caught a glimpse of what truly mattered. Not quarterly reports or acquisitions or stock prices, but the human lives affected by decisions made in distant boardrooms. As he left the hospital, Marcus found Gabriel Winters waiting beside his car, leaning against the polished black fender with casual disregard for its expensive finish. "How is she?" Gabriel asked without preamble. "Improving. The treatment is working." Marcus unlocked the car with a remote click. "I've just come from a board meeting where I proposed expanding the patient assistance programs." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Quite a reversal, the first of several. Marcus opened the driver's door. "I meant what I said last night, Winters. Redemption, not retribution, for both of us. I'm still not sure I trust this new leaf you've turned." "Neither am I." Marcus's honesty surprised even himself, "but I'm committed to seeing it through. The question is, are you?" Gabriel pushed off the car, standing straight. "What exactly are you proposing? Come by my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. We'll discuss the future of the Second Chance Foundation, legitimately this time." As Marcus drove away, he caught Gabriel's reflection in his rearview mirror. The former janitor, former convict, standing in the hospital parking lot, looking both suspicious and hopeful. An apt image for them both. Gabriel stood in the gleaming lobby of Petratech headquarters, feeling conspicuously out of place despite his carefully chosen suit. Security guards watched him with thinly veiled suspicion, clearly briefed on his background. The receptionist's smile remained professional but cool as she checked his ID and called upstairs for clearance. "Mr. Harrington will see you now," she said finally. 65th floor. His assistant will meet you at the elevator. The ride up was swift and silent, giving Gabriel time to consider the surreal turn his life had taken. A week ago, he'd been executing an elaborate financial con designed to destroy Marcus Harrington. Now he was heading to the man's office to discuss legitimate collaboration. Trust didn't come easily to Gabriel after his prison experience. This could still be an elaborate trap. Get him to implicate himself further, then press charges. Yet, something in Harrington's expression during their parking garage confrontation had seemed genuine. A recognition, perhaps, of their shared humanity beneath the roles they'd been playing. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek executive floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Harrington's assistant, a composed woman in her 50s, greeted him with professional courtesy. "Mr. Winters, this way, please." She led him to a spacious corner office where Marcus Harrington stood gazing out at the skyline, hands clasped behind his back. The CEO turned as Gabriel entered, his expression inscrutable. "Winters, right on time." He gestured to a seating area. "Coffee? Please." As they settled into leather chairs with steaming cups, Gabriel noted the subtle power dynamics at play. Harrington on his home turf, controlling the environment, setting the terms of engagement. It was what Gabriel himself would have done in a high-stakes negotiation. "I've been reviewing the Second Chance Foundation's structure," Harrington began, without preamble. Impressively designed for an organization created as a money-laundering vehicle, Gabriel didn't flinch at the blunt characterization. It was never intended to be permanent in that form, just functional enough to serve its purpose, which it did. Harrington slid a folder across the glass coffee table. "These are the preliminary papers to restructure it as a legitimate nonprofit, with proper governance and transparency." Gabriel opened the folder, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. His eyebrows rose as he reached the proposed budget. $25 million initial endowment, he noted, considerably more than the 10 you invested. "The foundation deserves a proper start," Harrington said evenly, "and I've discovered I can spare the funds." Gabriel continued reading, pausing at the proposed board of directors. "You've listed me as executive director." "Yes." "Why? After what I did?" "Because despite your methods, your objectives were sound." Harrington leaned forward. "You have the financial expertise to manage the endowment effectively and the personal motivation to ensure it serves its intended purpose. And my criminal record will be disclosed in all appropriate filings. Transparency, remember?" Harrington's expression remained neutral. "Your history gives you insight most financial experts lack. You understand both sides of the system." Gabriel closed the folder, studying the CEO with newfound curiosity. "What's your angle here, Harrington? People like you don't just forgive theft and offer partnerships without expecting something in return. A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, crossed Harrington's face. People like me? You mean cold, calculating billionaires who see everything as a transaction?" "Essentially, yes. Fair assessment, based on my recent history." Harrington sipped his coffee. "My angle, as you put it, is complex. Partly practical. Pursuing charges against you would be messy, public, and ultimately counterproductive. Partly strategic. Your financial skills are valuable, and I prefer having them working with me rather than against me. And," Gabriel pressed, sensing there was more, "and partly personal." Harrington set down his cup. "Meeting Sophia Reyes changed something. Reminded me of choices I made when Catherine was sick. Of the man I was before I walled off everything that felt like weakness." The admission seemed to cost him, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "So this is what?" "Atonement." Gabriel gestured to the folder. "Call it what you will. Investment. In something worthwhile. Course correction. Take your pick." Harrington's tone hardened slightly. "But understand this isn't sentimentality. The foundation will be run with the same efficiency and accountability as any of my business ventures, just with a different bottom line." "Exactly." Gabriel considered the proposal, looking for hidden traps or contingencies. The documents appeared legitimate, generous even. The salary offered for the executive director position was substantial. The governance structure balanced between financial oversight and medical expertise. "And my legal exposure?" he asked finally. "For the original scheme?" "Provided the foundation operates legitimately going forward, That chapter is closed. Harrington's gaze was steady. My attorneys have prepared documentation characterizing the initial $10 million as a founding investment, with the complex structure attributed to tax optimization, creative interpretation, but legally defensible, especially since the funds ultimately went to a charitable cause. Harrington shrugged. As I said, messy and counterproductive to pursue otherwise. Gabriel nodded slowly, still processing the offer. And Elena and Sophia, they never learn about the original deception? They're told the foundation was established by a collaborative effort between anonymous donors, including myself, which is, in its way, accurate. The solution was elegant, Gabriel had to admit. It protected everyone involved while ensuring the foundation's work could continue unimpeded. There is one condition, Harrington added, non-negotiable. I suspected as much. Full transparency between us going forward. No hidden agendas, no secret machinations. We work together openly, or not at all. Gabriel couldn't help but smile. You're asking a convicted fraudster to promise honesty? I'm asking a man who risked everything to help a child he barely knew to apply that same moral courage to our partnership. Harrington's response was immediate and pointed. The fraud was your method, not your objective. I'm interested in the objective. The assessment was surprisingly perceptive, cutting through Gabriel's defenses to the core truth he rarely acknowledged, that his crimes, both past and present, had been driven by genuine conviction rather than simple greed. All right, Gabriel said finally. Full transparency, but that goes both ways. Agreed. They shook hands, sealing an unlikely alliance born in deception, but potentially evolving into something more principled. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Harrington said, returning to his desk and retrieving another folder. Elena Reyes, what about her? She's suspicious about the timing and specificity of the anonymous donation. She's smart, observant, and directly involved with the patients we're helping. Eventually, she'll put the pieces together. Gabriel hadn't considered this angle, focused as he'd been on the financial mechanisms. You think we should tell her the truth? A version of it. Enough to enlist her support without compromising either of us unnecessarily. Harrington opened the folder. I'm proposing to offer her a position on the Foundation's Patient Advocacy Committee, paid consultation, influence over funding priorities, bringing her inside. Gabriel nodded appreciatively. Clever. Practical, Harrington corrected. Her expertise is valuable, and her perspective essential if the Foundation is to serve its purpose effectively. As they discussed the details of Elena's potential involvement, Gabriel found himself reassessing Marcus Harrington. The man was still calculating, still strategic, but those qualities were now being directed toward constructive ends rather than simply accumulating wealth and power. Why the change? Gabriel asked abruptly. The real reason. Not the practical justifications or strategic benefits. Why did meeting Sophia affect you so deeply? Harrington was silent for a long moment, his expression guarded. Then, surprisingly, it softened. Because she reminded me of Allison at that age. Because Catherine would have moved heaven and earth to help a child like Sophia. Because somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what actually matters. He met Gabriel's gaze directly. And because your willingness to risk everything to help her made me question what I've been risking everything to achieve. The raw honesty was unexpected, creating a moment of genuine connection between two men who had begun as adversaries. My daughter is visiting this weekend, Harrington continued, first time in nearly a year. I'd like to show her a father she can be proud of, not just a successful one. Gabriel nodded, understanding the distinction all too well. Second chances aren't just for patients. Indeed. Harrington extended his hand again. So, Mr. Winters, do we have an agreement? Looking at the offered hand, Gabriel made his decision. The path forward wouldn't be simple or without complications, but it offered something his revenge scheme never had, the possibility of lasting, legitimate impact. We do, he said, shaking Harrington's hand. To second chances. As Gabriel left Petratech headquarters, contract in hand, he felt an unfamiliar lightness. For the first time since his mother's death, since his imprisonment, he was building something rather than plotting destruction. The Foundation would help children like Sophia, would prevent other families from facing the impossible choices his mother had faced. Redemption came with a price. Trust, transparency, letting go of revenge. But standing in the sunlight outside, the corporate tower, Gabriel Winters found himself willing to pay it. 3 months passed with remarkable swiftness. The Second Chance Foundation transformed from a shell created for Gabriel's scheme into a legitimate organization with offices, staff, and an ambitious mission. The sleek conference room on the Foundation's top floor offered views of Memorial General Hospital across the park, a deliberate choice that kept their purpose literally in sight. Today, the room was filled with board members gathered for their quarterly meeting. Marcus sat at the head of the table, reviewing the agenda with his usual efficiency. Gabriel occupied the chair to his right. Financial reports spread before him. What had begun as an uneasy alliance had evolved into an effective partnership, each man's strengths complementing the other's. Item 4, Marcus announced. Expansion of the pediatric assistance programs. Mr. Winters, your report? Gabriel stood, activating the presentation screen. The initial results are exceeding projections. In our first quarter, we funded treatments for 17 children who would otherwise have been denied due to financial constraints. Cost per successful outcome is averaging 22% below industry standards, thanks to our negotiated protocols with treatment providers. The board members, a mix of medical professionals, financial experts, and community representatives, nodded appreciatively at the figures. Of particular note, Gabriel continued, highlighting a specific section of the report, is the success of our flagship case. Sophia Reyes has achieved complete remission after completing the CAR-T protocol. Her doctors project a 94% chance of long-term recovery. A ripple of satisfaction moved through the room. Though only a few knew the full story of how the Foundation had begun, all were aware that Sophia's case had been the catalyst for its creation. Ms. Reyes, Gabriel nodded toward Elena, who sat at the Patient Advocacy Committee section of the table, has prepared recommendations for our next phase of expansion. Elena rose, still wearing her nurse's scrubs from her morning shift. Her presence on the board had been controversial initially, a staff nurse among executives and physicians, but her practical insights had quickly proven invaluable. Thank you, Mr. Winters. She distributed folders to each board member. Our committee has identified 3 critical gaps in current coverage models. First, families who exceed income thresholds for public assistance but lack adequate insurance for catastrophic illness, the coverage gap that nearly cost Sophia her life. As Elena detailed the committee's findings and recommendations, Gabriel observed Marcus listening with genuine attention. The transformation in the CEO over the past months had been subtle, but significant. He still approached problems with analytical precision, still drove discussions toward concrete outcomes. But the cold calculation had been tempered with something resembling compassion. These recommendations would require increasing our annual disbursement by approximately 30%, Elena concluded. I recognize that's substantial, but the projected impact is worth the investment, Marcus finished for her. The Finance Committee will allocate the necessary funds. Implementation timeline? We could begin accepting applications within 30 days, Elena replied, clearly pleased but trying to maintain professional composure. Make it happen. Marcus made a note on his tablet. Next item, educational initiatives for long-term recovery patients. The meeting continued, each agenda item addressed with the efficiency that characterized the Foundation's operations. Unlike typical nonprofits that often struggled with bureaucracy and indecision, Second Chance operated with corporate discipline focused on humanitarian outcomes. As the board members filed out after adjournment, Marcus approached Elena. How is Sophia today? Back at school full-time as of Monday. Elena's face brightened with the joy of a mother whose child had been returned from the brink, complaining about math homework and obsessing over her science fair project. Wonderfully. Normal teenage things. The science project on cancer treatments? What else? Elena smiled. She's determined to revolutionize the field before she graduates high school. I wouldn't bet against her. Marcus's tone held genuine admiration. She has her mother's determination. A year ago, such personal observation from the Vulture would have been unthinkable. Elena still sometimes marveled at the change in the man who had once coldly voted to eliminate the very program that ultimately saved her daughter. Mr. Harrington, she said as he turned to leave. Sophia asked if you might attend her science fair next month. She wants to show you her research on cost reduction models for cellular therapies. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Surprise, perhaps, or an emotion less easily defined. I'd be honored. Have your committee assistant send the details to my office. After Elena left, Gabriel approached, coffee in hand. Another successful meeting. Indeed, Marcus gathered his materials, though we'll need to address the regulatory challenges in the northeastern expansion. The state requirements for Arizona and Nevada are straightforward, but Massachusetts has additional hurdles. Already on it, Gabriel sipped his coffee. I've scheduled meetings with their health department next week. Compliance will require additional documentation, but nothing insurmountable. They walked together toward the elevator, their conversation shifting easily between foundation business and broader healthcare policy issues. To an observer, they might have appeared to be longtime colleagues rather than former adversaries. How? Was your weekend with Allison? Gabriel asked as they descended to the lobby. Good. A small smile crossed Marcus's face. She's considering transferring to the medical school here. Says she's been reevaluating her priorities. Your influence. More likely her mother's. But I'll take what I can get. Marcus checked his watch. Speaking of which, I should go. We're having dinner tonight. Outside, their cars waited. Marcus's familiar Rolls-Royce and Gabriel's more modest sedan. Before they parted, Marcus handed Gabriel a file folder. What's this? The final transfer documents for the Jensen Biotech Research Division. They're being spun off as an independent entity, with the foundation holding a controlling interest. Gabriel stared at him. That wasn't in our plans. It is now. Marcus's expression remained impassive. Their CAR-T research shows promise beyond oncology applications. Having direct influence over development priorities and pricing models aligns with our mission. This represents, Gabriel quickly calculated the implications, at least 50 million in diverted corporate assets. 62.5 to be precise. Marcus straightened his tie. The board approved it this morning as a strategic restructuring for optimal innovation outcomes. Corporate doublespeak for doing the right thing while pretending it's still about profit. Gabriel couldn't help but laugh. You're using the same corporate machinery that made you the Vulture to systematically dismantle your own predatory empire. Not dismantle. Repurpose. Marcus's correction was immediate. Petra Tech remains highly profitable. The difference is in how we define value and measure success. The distinction was important, Gabriel realized. Marcus wasn't abandoning his business acumen or strategic thinking. He was redirecting those skills toward more balanced objectives, evolution, rather than revolution. The foundation will need to establish proper research oversight protocols, Gabriel noted, already thinking through the implications, and patient trial frameworks. It's a significant expansion of our scope. I have complete confidence in your ability to manage it. Marcus's phone chimed with a message. Allison's arrived early. I need to go. As Marcus's car pulled away, Gabriel remained on the sidewalk, folder in hand, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The foundation that had begun as a vehicle for his revenge scheme was evolving into something far more significant than he had imagined, a force for systemic change within the healthcare industry itself. Later that afternoon, Gabriel visited Memorial General, making his weekly rounds to check on patients receiving foundation support. The pediatric oncology ward, recently renamed the Harrington Center for Pediatric Oncology, had been renovated with foundation funds, transformed from its former institutional sterility into a more hopeful, child-friendly environment. In the playroom, he found Sophia tutoring younger patients, her own recovery serving as living inspiration for children still undergoing treatment. Though still thin, her color had returned, her energy rebounding with the resilience unique to the young. Mr. Winters! She waved him over to the table where she was helping a small boy with a puzzle. Come see what Kyle made. It's the molecular structure of his medicine. Gabriel joined them, admiring the colorful creation while marveling at Sophia's transformation. 3 months ago, she had been close to death. Today, she was helping others through their own journeys, already embodying the healer she aspired to become. My mom says you're helping lots of kids now, Sophia said as Kyle returned to his puzzle. Not just me. The foundation is, Gabriel corrected gently. I just help with the money part. Sophia fixed him with the direct gaze that had so affected Marcus during their first meeting. Mom says it was your idea, that you started it all. Gabriel chose his words carefully. I had a part in it, but it took many people to make it real, including your mother and Mr. Harrington, the boss man. Sophia nodded seriously. He's different now. Not scary anymore. Was he scary before? Not scary like monsters. Scary like... She searched for words, like someone who forgot how to feel things. Empty, scary. The description was remarkably perceptive. Gabriel had seen that emptiness himself during their early encounters, the hollowness behind Harrington's eyes that had gradually filled with renewed purpose. He's coming to my science fair, Sophia continued proudly. I'm showing how we could make my treatment cost way less so more kids can get it. That's an important project. I know. Her expression turned solemn. Because it's not fair that some kids get medicine and some don't just because of money. That's a stupid reason for someone to die. Out of the mouths of children, Gabriel thought. The simple truth that had driven his elaborate scheme, now spoken plainly by the girl who had benefited from it. It is stupid, he agreed. That's why we're working to change it. Sophia beamed at him, then returned to helping Kyle with his puzzle. Gabriel watched them for a moment longer, then continued his rounds, checking in with other foundation beneficiaries and their families. By the time he left the hospital, evening was falling. The foundation's offices visible across the park, lights still glowing in some windows where staff worked late, from shell company to legitimate enterprise, from revenge plot to redemptive mission. Not a bad transformation for 3 months' work. 6 months later, autumn painted the city in russet and gold. Elena Reyes stood at the entrance to her school, backpack slung over her shoulder, hair grown, back in a short pixie cut that framed her face. From the outside, she looked like any other 8th grader. The months of illness visible only in the slight thinness of her frame, and the wisdom in her eyes that children shouldn't have to earn. So young. Ready for your big day? Elena asked, adjusting Sophia's collar with the reflexive fussing of mothers everywhere. Mom, stop. Sophia squirmed away, suddenly self-conscious as classmates passed by. It's just a regular checkup. 1 year post-treatment is not just anything. Elena countered, but she dropped her hands. It's a milestone. Sophia softened. I know. I'm a little nervous. Dr. Martinez said your blood work looks perfect. Elena checked her watch. I'll pick you up at 3, and we'll head straight to the hospital. Can we stop for ice cream after, whether it's good news or bad? Elena smiled at the familiar request, their tradition throughout Sophia's treatment journey. Of course, as Sophia disappeared into the school building, Elena found herself blinking back unexpected tears. 1 year ago, she'd been preparing for the unthinkable, for a world without her daughter in it. Now, they were discussing normal teenage concerns like homework and friend drama and which flavor ice cream to celebrate with, all because of an anonymous donation that had turned out to be not so anonymous after all. Elena checked her phone, finding a message from Gabriel. Board papers ready for your review. Foundation office or hospital? She typed quickly. Hospital. After Sophia's appointment. 5 p.m., his response came immediately. Perfect. Conference room reserved. M will join, M for Marcus. Harrington. Still strange to think of the former Vulture as an ally, almost a friend. The man who had once coldly voted to eliminate the Patient Assistance Fund now championed healthcare access with the same intensity he'd once applied to profit margins. Elena's nursing shift began in 20 minutes. As she drove to Memorial General, her thoughts drifted to the remarkable changes of the past year. Not just Sophia's recovery, but her own unexpected career evolution. From bedside nurse to patient advocate, now dividing her time between clinical work and foundation responsibilities. The Catherine Harrington Center for Pediatric Oncology had doubled its capacity, with treatment protocols developed at the foundation's research division reducing costs while improving outcomes. Children who would have been sent home with hospice referrals now received cutting-edge therapies regardless of their family's financial resources. At the hospital, Elena found her colleague Diane at the nurses' station. Big day. Diane greeted. Her 1 year mark, trying not to overthink it. Elena hung her purse in her locker. Martinez says the numbers look good. They do. Diane's smile was reassuring. I peeked at the file. Sophia's officially a success story. Don't jinx it, Elena warned, though hope had been growing steadily with each clean scan, each normal blood test. Wouldn't dream of it. Diane handed her a patient chart. New admission in room 4. 7-year-old male, all. Similar presentation to Sophia's initially. Foundation case? Already approved. Treatment starts tomorrow. Elena nodded, feeling the familiar mix of professional, dedication, and personal connection. Every child with leukemia now reminded her of Sophia, not in a way that compromised her nursing judgment, but that deepened her commitment. The morning passed in the organized chaos of hospital routine. By lunchtime, Elena had assessed 3 patients, assisted with a bone marrow biopsy, and participated in 2 family consultations. The work remained demanding, but felt different now that she could offer not just care but hope, tangible resources through the foundation, treatments previously beyond reach. In the staff lounge, She found Gabriel in conversation with Dr. Martinez, both men looking up as she entered. "Shouldn't you be running a multi-million-dollar foundation?" Elena teased, pouring herself coffee. "Currently, running from the multi-million-dollar foundation," Gabriel corrected with a smile. "Hiding from the lawyers reviewing our Massachusetts regulatory applications." "Coward. Strategic retreat," he countered. "Besides, I wanted to check on today's patients before the board meeting." That was Gabriel's pattern, balancing executive responsibilities with personal connections to the children they served. Despite his financial expertise and corporate title, he spent at least one day each week in the hospital, learning patients' names, understanding their needs beyond abstract numbers and reports. "Sophia's appointment is at 3:30, Dr. Martinez mentioned. "I've scheduled extra time for a thorough review." "She's nervous," Elena admitted, though she'd never say so. "Understandable. But based on her preliminary results, I expect only good news." After Martinez left, Gabriel lingered, something clearly on his mind. "Everything okay?" Elena asked. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something before the meeting." He seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "The foundation is establishing a medical scholarship for pediatric oncology specialists, full funding through medical school for candidates committed to serving underrepresented communities." "That's wonderful. We'd like to name it the Sophia Reyes Future Healers Scholarship." Elena stared at him, momentarily speechless. "She's just a kid who inspired all of this." Gabriel gestured vaguely, encompassing the renovated department, the foundation across the park, the changed lives. "Her resilience, her determination to become a doctor who makes treatments more accessible. It's the perfect embodiment of our mission." Emotion tightened Elena's throat. "She'll be overwhelmed. In a good way, I hope." Gabriel checked his watch. "Think about it. We can discuss details at the meeting." "Harrington feels strongly about this, by the way. It was his idea." That detail made it even more remarkable. The man who had once seen Sophia as a budget statistic now wanted to honor her with a named scholarship. Later that afternoon, Elena sat beside Sophia in Dr. Martinez's office, holding her breath as the doctor reviewed the comprehensive test results. "Complete remission," Martinez confirmed, smiling broadly. "All markers normal. 1 year cancer-free." Sophia's grip on Elena's hand was painfully tight. "Really? No tricks?" "No tricks." Martinez turned his tablet to show them the results. "Compare your numbers from diagnosis to now, night and day." As Sophia examined the medical data with precocious understanding, Elena caught sight of 2 figures through the office window, Marcus Harrington and Gabriel Winters, standing in the corridor, waiting for news. One a billionaire CEO, the other a former convict, both transformed by their connection to her daughter. Sophia followed her gaze, then waved excitedly at the men, giving them an enthusiastic thumbs up. Their visible relief, Harrington's small, contained smile, Gabriel's broader grin, spoke volumes about journeys that had become intertwined in ways none of them could have predicted. "Ice cream time?" Sophia asked, turning back to Elena. "Absolutely." Elena embraced her daughter, breathing in the miracle of her presence. The biggest sundae they make. Some wounds healed cleanly, leaving barely a scar. Others transformed those they touched, creating something new from what was broken. As Elena watched Sophia chatting animatedly with her doctors about her latest science project, she recognized that their wounds, all of their wounds, were finally healing. The auditorium of Memorial General Hospital buzzed with anticipation as community members, medical staff, patients, and their families gathered for the first anniversary celebration of the Second Chance Foundation. The stage was decorated simply but elegantly, with the foundation's logo, a stylized phoenix rising, projected on the wall behind the podium. In the front row, Sophia sat between Elena and Allison Harrington, the 2 young women having formed an unexpected friendship over the past year. Sophia wore a blue dress chosen for the occasion, her health fully restored, her future once again stretching before her with infinite possibility. "Nervous about your speech?" Allison asked, noticing Sophia fidgeting with her note cards. "A little," Sophia admitted. "What if I mess up? Then you'll keep going, just like you've done with everything else." Allison squeezed her hand. "Besides, you're the star of this whole event. Everyone already loves you." On stage, Marcus approached the podium, commanding the room's attention without effort. The past year had softened some of his harder edges, though the formidable intelligence and presence remained. His gaze found Allison and Sophia in the front row, his expression warming momentarily before returning to professional composure. 1 year ago, he began, the Second Chance Foundation was established with a simple but vital mission: to ensure that no child is denied life-saving treatment due to financial constraints. What began as a response to one specific case has grown into an organization that has served over 200 families and fundamentally changed how pediatric care is delivered in this community. The audience applauded, many nodding in recognition of the foundation's impact. In the side wing of the stage, Gabriel waited for his introduction, watching Marcus with a mixture of respect and lingering amazement at their unlikely partnership. Road hasn't been without challenges, Marcus continued. Regulatory hurdles, bureaucratic resistance, institutional inertia, all the forces that typically prevent meaningful change in healthcare. Yet we've persevered, driven by the knowledge that each obstacle overcome means another child receives treatment, another family spared the impossible choice between financial ruin and losing a loved one. Gabriel noted the subtle but significant "we" in Marcus's speech. The former corporate raider now fully invested in collective impact rather than individual achievement. When Catherine had died, Marcus had retreated into isolation, building walls between himself and potential pain. Now, he was reconnected to Allison, to the Foundation's mission, to the community he once viewed solely through spreadsheets. Like to introduce our executive director, the man whose financial expertise and unwavering commitment have made our ambitious vision a practical reality, Gabriel Winters. As Gabriel took the podium, he reflected on the strangeness of this moment. A year ago, he'd been plotting Marcus Harrington's downfall while mopping the hospital's floors. Now they were allies, collaborators, even friends of a sort, bound by shared purpose rather than mutual destruction. Thank you, Marcus. Gabriel surveyed the audience. When we talk about the Foundation's impact, we typically focus on numbers. Patients treated, dollars saved, survival rates improved. Important metrics, certainly, but inadequate to capture what truly matters. The individual lives transformed, the futures restored, the potential preserved. He gestured toward Sophia. 1 year ago, a remarkable young woman faced a terminal diagnosis because a treatment existed but was deemed too expensive. Today, she sits before us, healthy and determined to ensure others receive the same chance she was given. Sophia Reyes isn't just our success story. She's our inspiration and our conscience. Sophia blushed at the attention, but sat straighter, pride evident in her posture. Gabriel outlined the Foundation's accomplishments and future initiatives, including the new research partnerships, expanded treatment protocols, and the scholarship program bearing Sophia's name. As he spoke, he caught Elena's eye in the audience, her expression reflecting the journey they'd all traveled, from desperate nurse and deceptive janitor to respected colleagues united by a shared mission. After Gabriel concluded, several patients and families shared their stories, each testimony underscoring the Foundation's real-world impact. Finally, Marcus returned to the podium. Our final speaker today represents everything the Second Chance Foundation stands for: resilience, hope, and the determination to create positive change from personal challenge. Please welcome Sophia Reyes. The audience applauded as Sophia made her way to the stage, note cards clutched tightly in her hand. At the podium, she seemed momentarily overwhelmed by the crowd, her eyes seeking out Elena for reassurance. "A year ago," Sophia began, her voice initially soft but gaining strength. "I was dying. The doctors had tried everything covered by our insurance, but nothing worked. The one treatment that could save me cost more than my mom could ever afford." The room fell silent, captivated by her direct honesty. I remember overhearing my mom on the phone, trying to get loans, selling our car, working extra shifts, all while spending every possible moment with me in the hospital. I pretended not to know how bad things were, but I knew. Sophia looked up from her notes, her gaze finding Marcus in the front row. Then something happened that felt like magic, an anonymous donation that funded not just my treatment, but created a whole program to help kids like me. Later, I found out it wasn't really magic. It was people making choices to help strangers, instead of just themselves. She turned slightly, acknowledging Gabriel and Marcus with a smile. "The medicine saved my life, but it's what happened afterward that changed it. Seeing how people could come together to fix a broken system showed me that big problems aren't unfixable. They just need the right people to care enough to solve them." Sophia set aside her note cards, speaking now from the heart. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor who makes treatments work for everyone, not just people with money. And I'm going to remember that sometimes the most important medicine isn't in an IV bag or a pill bottle. It's in how we treat each other when things seem impossible. The simplicity and sincerity of her words touched even the most seasoned medical professionals in the audience. As Sophia concluded her speech, the room erupted in a standing ovation, led by Marcus and Gabriel at the front. The formal ceremony transitioned to a reception in the hospital atrium, where foundation donors mingled with medical staff and patient families. Sophia found herself the center of attention, handling the spotlight with growing confidence as she described her science fair project on cost reduction models for cellular therapies. Across the room, Marcus stood with Allison, watching the celebration with quiet satisfaction. "Dad," Allison said, using the term of endearment that had only recently returned to their relationship, "I've been thinking about what you said last week, about joining the foundation board after I finish medical school." "And?" Marcus kept his tone neutral, though the possibility meant more to him than he could express. "I'd like to, but not because it's what you want." Allison's expression grew serious. "Because it matters. Because what you and Gabriel have built here is what Mom would have wanted for her legacy." Marcus nodded, emotion momentarily preventing speech. Catherine's presence had been felt throughout the day's events, her name honored in the pediatric center, her values finally resumed in the work he now pursued. "She would be proud of you," he said finally. "I am proud of you." Nearby, Gabriel and Elena stood watching Sophia charm a group of potential donors with her enthusiastic descriptions of future medical innovations. "Hard to believe that's the same girl who was so sick last year," Gabriel remarked. "Children are resilient." Elena's voice held the wonder of a parent who had nearly lost everything. "But they shouldn't have to be that resilient. No child should have to fight both disease and financial barriers to treatment. They won't. Not while the foundation exists." Elena studied him, her expression thoughtful. "You know, I've never asked exactly how you and Harrington came together to start all this. Two more different people would be hard to imagine." Gabriel smiled enigmatically. "Let's just say we both needed redemption for different reasons. Sophia provided the opportunity." Before Elena could press further, Sophia bounded over, eyes bright with excitement. "Mom! Mr. Harrington says I can tour the research labs at Jensen Biotech next week. Their lead scientist wants to hear my ideas about the membrane stabilization technique." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Elena smoothed Sophia's hair automatically. "But don't forget you have school." "It's an educational field trip," Sophia argued, with the logic of determined teenagers everywhere. "Basically homework." Gabriel laughed. "She has you there, Elena." As the evening wound down, the four principal figures in the foundation story found themselves together in a quiet corner of the atrium. Marcus and Allison Harrington, Gabriel Winters, Elena and Sophia Reyes. An unlikely grouping that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "To second chances," Marcus proposed, raising his glass in a toast. "And to first chances for those who need them," Sophia added wisely. Their glasses clinked in agreement, the simple gesture cementing a commitment that had begun in deception, but evolved into something authentic and lasting. Outside the hospital, windows, the city continued its rhythm, lives intertwining, separating, reconnecting in patterns too complex to fully comprehend. But within this small circle, a truth had been rediscovered, that even the most hardened hearts could be transformed by compassion, that purpose could emerge from pain, that healing extended beyond the body to encompass the spirit. One desperate scheme, born of righteous anger, had sparked a chain of redemption that would ripple outward for generations to come. As night fell over Memorial General Hospital, the Second Chance Foundation stood as testament to an essential truth, that sometimes the most broken systems and people contained within them the seeds of their own healing. If this story touched your heart, remember that compassion is the true measure of our humanity. Share this message with someone who believes in second chances, and let love grow by passing it on.